see here. All right, all right, all right, all right. I think we're live now. Okay. All right, all right, all right. Welcome to episode 790 of the Black Brain Trust. This is Black Cultural Intelligence, the cultural impact of Booker T. Washington. And I am honored to have my good brother, Rael, with me today for this live stream. Yo, Rael, you there?
Yep, I'm right here, bro.
Hey, man, how's the sounds coming through, man? How's everything sounding?
Sounds perfect.
Sounds perfect. Okay, let's do this. Let's welcome everybody.
How does it sound to the audience?
That's what I'm gonna do a sound check right now before we get started. Let me see here. So let's do this. Let's do our gratuities here, and then can you guys press? Sound is okay. Is the music good? Just want to make sure, the sound isn't kind of overpowering our voices and what have you. 360 Ronan. All right, perfect. Appreciate you, brother. And I want to shout out everybody who's joining us here. We got Ronan, we got Art Johnson, we got Willie Littlejohn. Select peace and salute to all of y'all. We got Alonzo in the house, Iko Giamian in the house. Okay, that's what's up, man. Well, check it out. This is a live stream that's been in the making for what, Ryle? 6 weeks, 2 months?
Man, I'll probably
Maybe
say
longer.
4 months.
Maybe longer.
Yeah, man.
You know what I'm saying?
Hey,
Yo.
I didn't really. I mean, I know what he has represented, but I didn't realize the dearth of research that had been done on him. That's in some recent years.
Mm-hmm.
Of people, having to revisit him and his legacy and what he really stood for. So the research is voluminous. It's a lot because it makes sense because there was a lot to this man who was not as complicated as a lot of people make him out to be. A lot of incompetent people have tried to make him be complicated when he was very simple and to the point. And sometimes for certain people, sometimes simplicity is complex.
Well, isn't there? They say that sophistication lies in simplicity, right?
Yes.
Okay, and the thumbnail that we chose for this live stream of well, I'll just say I would consider an ancestor of mine, and we'll leave it there.
Yes.
Same to you as well. That I don't know. That looked like a distinguished brother. What say you?
Absolutely. I didn't include this in the research because there's so much, but one of the things that I found out that he was very much a master of the media.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that he would do to really reinforce his stature was use pictures to send subliminal messages. There were times where, for example, he sat in on a speech Teddy Roosevelt was giving, and they would have, obviously he was the president, and they would have his paraphernalia there, showing who he was, and Booker T. Washington will put a little picture of himself close,
right,
and it was his subtle way of showing not just himself, but that black people belonged to in that conversation. That black
Right.
people belonged in the kinds of conversations centered around um, uh, economic development, things of that sort. And he was just very crafty at using uh, uh, photographic media during that time,
Mm-hmm.
which was pretty a new medium of actually of media, using photographs to actually push messaging, and he was very adept at doing that, which was surprising to see that whatever pictures he took, it was not by accident. It was a
Right.
purpose behind every picture he took and disseminated to the public. It was a purpose behind it.
Right. Okay. I got the presentation up. Now before we jump into it, because I'll have to bounce back between doing the full screen presentation and then checking the chat. My first question to you, bro, do you want to drop the link now and have people up and then we go over it? How do you want to do it?
Let's get into it first, and then
Okay.
I guess maybe within like 30 to 45 we could drop it.
We can drop it. Okay. And then real quick, Renaissance man, you say, what playlist is this? You already know me, bro. I share my musics. Here, let's do this. This is the new Alchemist album called Variables. Uh One of my favorite listens right now.
Written in the stars, this shit is a mirage.
So here, let me drop that real quick here for Ren.
You sober up, see your uncle living in his car, you would help him out. You're the splitting image of your father.
And let me get this right here.
But maybe you could do this mission in the mind. I'm thinking of the past. They paid man to figures in the dark.
And when the next selection on the playlist drops, I'll drop that for you as well, Ren. We'll have some midnight hour following this. There you go. All right. Here, let me do this.
That means you know who I am before I talk, right? And you
All right. And let's see here. Does everything look okay there? I need to check on my phone real quick.
Yeah, everything looks good.
Looks good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So is there a preface you want to do?
And you didn't have you that was just for you, so you can follow along too. So you don't have to put that much pressure on yourself to go back and forth. That's just for you to be able to follow.
Oh, so wait, did you want me to present this or?
No. I'm saying you didn't have to. You don't have to show it for the public. That's what I was saying. Like you didn't have to show it for the public. Like it was for you, for you to follow along, so you can, because sometimes when I do this stuff, like I forget to send you the PDFs or the PowerPoint so you can follow along too. So,
okay, well, look, why don't we do this? You want to just I can just go ahead and flip through the slides and drop if you want to. Then because I'm gonna follow your lead on this. So do you want to?
Yeah, I'm just gonna read. I'm just gonna read from the slides. I'm just go straight from the slides.
Okay,
Yeah,
right, that's what's up. All right, so let's go here. All right. You got it, bro.
Before I get into the meat of this presentation, I want to read something that I think is important for the audience to hear. And this is not just for this particular stream. This is for future reference. And this is dealing with rhetoric. And this is from a book that I got, in college that I used because I was an English major, and it's been very helpful to understand the rhetorical experience, to understand how you need to approach when you're talking to different audiences, because you do need to understand the audience in which you speak to. And I assume that those who are listening, um, this is a more serious-minded audience. So this is the reason why. One of the reasons why we want to do this, because we know that this is a really serious topic that really needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
So we've taken it upon ourselves to address it in this manner. This is from the Hard-Brace's Guide to Writing, and this is a section called "The Purposeful Use of Language and Images." And I'm just going to read a little bit from this to just set the stage for us delving into the man known as Booker T. Washington. Um, it states that the Greek philosopher Aristotle coined an authoritative definition of rhetoric over 2,500 years ago. He stated that rhetoric is the faculty of observing in any given situation the available means of persuasion. I'm going to be very clear. This presentation is about persuasion. Um, we are attempting to get um, not just the men, but the whole entire group to buy into what we're talking about today, because we really believe this is really important in terms of the consciousness of the group as a collective. We believe that many of the issues that we are dealing with is, um, in our view, and has a lot to do with our misunderstanding such a historical and fascinating figure like Booker T. Washington, and
Mm-hmm.
how this misunderstanding has seeped into the cultural consciousness of the group over time, that has allowed many flawed notions centered around Black people's ability to work together, to pull their resources together to get things accomplished. It has seeped into the consciousness to the point that we believe as a collective we're not capable of doing that. And we've seen this type of mentality represented in this particular space as well. We've seen the pushback that we have gotten in this space, trying to get men, particularly, uh, into the world of business uh, and tech, and how much of a pushback we've gotten in that vein.
Mm-hmm.
And we're gonna see how all that we have been doing this entire time is basically picking up where he left off.
Exactly.
We're going to prove that what we're about actually used to be the norm among us and has become not the norm, which presents its own set of challenges that we have been talking about in spaces like this for quite some time. Um, um, it states that rhetoric is the faculty or ability of observing. Notice that Aristotle does not call for you to overpower your audience, your readers or listeners with words or images, nor does he push for winning an argument. Instead, he encourages you to observe. For Aristotle and all of the rhetorical thinkers who have followed, observation is primary. Before you say or write something, you need to observe, to take the time to figure out what kind of rhetorical situation you're entering. To whom are you speaking or writing? What is your relationship to that person or group of people? What is the occasion? Who else is listening? What do you want your language to accomplish? By answering these questions, you're establishing the elements of the given situation. The last phrase in Aristotle's definition of rhetoric is the available means of persuasion. Persuasion is not a zero sum game with the winner taking all. Think of persuasion as a coming together, a meeting of the minds. Ideally, persuasion results in both you and your audience being changed by the experience. When both parties are changed, however slightly, the rhetorical interaction isn't one sided. Both sides are heard, and a decision is made that benefits the sender and the receivers of the original message. Aristotle tells us that rhetoric's function is not simply successful persuasion, rather, it is to discover the means of coming as near such success as the circumstances of each particular case allow. If your purpose is to get your way, you'll sometimes succeed. But if getting your way is your only persuasive purpose, you're in for a long string of disappointments. Um, Today is not about being right for us. I want to make that clear. This is not today. Stream is not going to be a stream to bash anybody.
Nope.
This is going to be a stream to inform because somebody like myself who was in business, I found out about Booker T. Washington's National Negro Business League in 2018. You know, after some years of being in business, and to be honest, I was ashamed because I hadn't known the true greatness of what this man represented.
Mm-hmm.
So being in business, it's like almost being in business and not knowing about Reginald Lewis,
Mm-hmm.
you know, who wrote "Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun," which to me is really a manifesto to Black men. It's a challenge to them to engage in business, and um, it made me kind of really start really searching him out. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
in college I had took some classes, African American political thought class where we broached him, but we really didn't cover him.
Right.
He needs a single class to really cover him, or two, or more, to really get to the depth of what he really truly represented. Um, uh, he represented the true best of what we have to offer as Black men, and unfortunately, history, a lot of the history that has been penned by Black intellectuals surrounding him has not been very respectful of what he was and what he was trying to get accomplished for Black people at that particular time. So what
That's
we
not
were,
something that's foreign to us, right?
right,
Isn't it? Isn't that hasn't that always been the case, right?
right,
Enterprising individuals have always met the scrutiny of intellectuals.
right. And so um, what we want to do is rewrite that wrong here. Um, this is not a stream about entertainment. This is a grown man and woman's type stream today. And because of what he represents, we're going to give him the proper respect by not making it about that, but specifically about him and what he represents. Because all of us, boy, girl, man, or woman, we all can take inspiration from Booker T. Washington and what he represented, because he wasn't just about uplifting Black men, although that was his primary focus because he knew that the men needed to take the lead. But he was also about uplifting the Black women of that particular time as well. And we will get into that as well. All right, let's start this. I want to open this up. This is in reference to the National Negro Business League. For those of you who don't know, the National Negro Business League started in 1900. Its first meeting in Boston, Massachusetts, and this is Booker T. Washington giving his comments about the need for such an organization of that time uh, 45 years after chattel slavery. Booker T. Washington notes, my observation in this regard led me a few years ago to believe that the time had come for bringing together the leading and most successful colored men and women in the country who were engaged in business. The benefits of such a meeting were obvious. In the first place, the bringing together of these persons would result in their getting acquainted with each other and receiving information and inspiration from one another. In the second place, plans could be formed for extending the influence of the meeting to the remotest corners of the land through the organization of local leagues of business men and women, and thus encourage more and more of our people to enter business. This is from Booker T. Washington's book, The Negro in Business. These are the words of one of the most influential men in Black history, yet most Blacks probably wouldn't recognize him on a picture. Who is Booker T. Washington? This simple question, depending on whom you ask, will elicit a range of responses, many of which wouldn't be gracious in nature. That wouldn't be befitting of the man Dr. John Henry Clark dubbed our greatest Black leader. Underlining much of the criticism of Booker T. Washington concerned his approach. Booker T. Washington's approach to addressing white racism was economic independence, something Blacks are nowhere near having in 2023 and beyond. Evidenced by Charlene Reinhardt's article, African American Wealth May Fall to Zero by 2053 in Black Enterprise magazine, a very sobering reality in lieu of the fact we do have some Blacks who demonstrate economic prowess, Robert F. Smith, for example, and a grasp of how American capitalism works, as Howard Cruz puts in his brilliant work, Rebellion and Revolution. We have cultivated among us a very strong bourgeoisie outlook among our articulate, educated classes. But this bourgeois mentality is not matched by any parallel achievements as capitalists, producers, entrepreneurs, or managers. This is from his work, Rebellion or Revolution. Cruz refers to the reality then and now that Blacks really don't have an economic infrastructure that undergirds the forward progression of Blacks collectively. Cruz states further, hence, this bourgeois mentality becomes in many ways a troublesome intellectual abnormality in many Negroes. I want to stop it there because this is very important to understand, okay? Many of us who engage in business find ourselves banging our head against this intellectual wall of Black people, wherein which in our world of business, you can't intellectualize your way through. You have to actually get in it. You have to get into it. You can't be on the sideline sniping about this and that, and it not being perfect, and all of these different things that really are obstacles to you actually engaging in it in the first place. You have to get in it. I tell people all the time, the best business experience is actually starting a business from the ground level.
Right.
It's the best.
Yep.
because you have to
learn on the fly.
right. You have to learn every aspect of the business. You have to research, and you gotta, this is where your people skills come in. Me and
You may actually be the person to solve some problems.
right. I joke with you like how you was able to get the deal as
Oh,
far as like the
the
schooling. I mean, just ingenious. You know what I'm saying? Damon John talked about this, like,
hmm
when he did Fubu, he had to really think because he had no money.
hmm
So he had to really outthink, you know, the market, in terms of competition, because he was lacking that capital that he would otherwise need. But it gave him, that need forced him to think his way through it.
Right.
And so I think that a lot of times from the intellectual side, they miss that because they literally have no idea what the business realm is about. It's really people who just speak, particularly on ignorance. And ignorance is okay as long as you're trying to learn. But when you're talking to the business class of your group, it behooves you to actually listen to what they have to say.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Uh, Now, Cruz called this a troublesome intellectual abnormality. Um, we know we have a lot of corner store philosophers on YouTube
hmm
who represent this because they spend so much time trying to quarrel with us in this world. They don't understand that we're trying to lead them in the right direction, but they're too busy quarreling and arguing with us. So Cruz goes on and he says, these bourgeois trappings are worn like expensive but ill-fitting clothes by people who harbor exaggerated bourgeois ideals,
Spoken like a true industrialist.
but who lack the substance to back up these ideals. It would not be so half bad if these bourgeois-oriented Negroes are, economics-wise, the most ill-equipped of all people. They clutter up the Negro civil rights movement with their strident protests and really believe that American capitalism is going to grant them racial equality while they remain in blind ignorance of the inner workings of American capitalism.
Ay, yeah, 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 yeah.
Ooh,
Oh,
ooh,
oh,
brutal,
oh,
brutal.
brutal, brutal, brutal. That's a brutal truth.
That's hard body right there.
That's hard body.
He's saying it reminds me of the time I had an ex and I said to her about her mother. I said, how your mom gonna be bougie and broke at the same time?
It's not possible. It's not possible.
I mean, I was like early 20 when I said this. So he's actually capturing that phenomenon though. He actually brilliantly captured that. You have the bourgeois cloak, but underneath that cloak is really a poverty mindset. It's a lack mentality.
Wait a minute. Wait. Not. This isn't even a digression. This is more of like we're drawing an association, right? Because there's this conversation in greater black social media about a person who uh, is decided not to date a certain type of person, right?
Right.
Because of I guess we can call an overinflated sense of self,
Mm-hmm.
self-worth, self-value,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, he called this shit What, 100 years ago?
No, this is Cruz. He is the author of. A lot of people know him for his book, the Crisis of the Negro Intellectual, which hits hard too, like this.
Hmm.
But this is from his book. This is from Harold Cruz. This book came out in 1967.
Okay, 67. Okay. I mean,
So
still, that's some years. That's some years ago.
yeah, so he was very spot on in really pinpointing this issue because if your whole argument is about racism, but you don't understand how American capitalism works, you know, in terms of having to aggregate pools of your money to make it work on behalf of you and your group, you're going to be the kind of people that every time something doesn't go your way, you're going to make it be about racism.
Right.
When a lot of times your issues are you're not properly utilizing the system to your advantage the way you're supposed to. He said Negroes are economics-wise the most ill-equipped of all people. They clutter up the Negro civil rights movement with their strident protests and really believe that American capitalism is going to grant them racial equality while they remain in blind ignorance of the inner workings of capitalism. Cruz's cultural dissection of blacks' lack of economic mastery over their own domestic affairs brings us back to Booker T. Washington and why his economic platform was important for blacks nationally and internationally. At the heart of many black movements has been the economic blueprint set forth by Booker T. Washington, from the Garveyites, the Nation of Islam with their Do for Self slogan, to efforts such as Washington's African Union Project, which Cruz writes was for promoting trade between American Negroes and the Gold Coast, which was destroyed by the World War II interruption of World War One interruption of Atlantic Ocean trade routes.
Right. Because he was over there trying to make moves in Togo.
Right. So he
did make moves.
He
It was
did.
interrupted. It was interrupted.
Yeah, it was just only interrupted because of
It was
the
interrupted.
World War.
Right.
So, so before any notions of Garveyism and Pan-Africanism, Booker T. Washington was a true Pan-Africanist. He was a true.
He's your proto Pan-African. He's your proto Pan-Africanist.
Right. Cruz demonstrates that Booker T. Washington's impact was felt not just here domestically, but internationally as well. With this information and much more from scholars who have been forced to not only continuously reassess Booker T. Washington's contributions to Black America, but we are forced to reevaluate Booker T. Washington not as the accommodationist with tones of Uncle Tomism attached to the title, but as a Black nationalist who attempted to encourage Blacks to use the tools of capitalism to help spur a reinvigoration of the spirit of Blacks, as well create a foundation for Black economic expansion with the goal of being able to fully participate as full citizens in America.
I don't like that former projection of him. Some sort of pacifist.
Yes.
He's an industrialist.
It's a lie.
Oh my God, it's a fucking lie.
It's absolutely false. And we don't show how false it is.
Yeah, it's a complete lie.
Prove that. There is no question that Booker T. Washington has never been and was never a sellout for Black people. This is our attempt to undo the grave injustice Black America has done to one of its Black titans. On August 23rd and 24th, Booker T. Washington and others organized a meeting that brought about the founding of the National Negro Business League. Washington writes in his work, The Negro in Business, regarding the impetus for the gathering. The meeting was enthusiastic, but at the same time practical. Those who were in attendance believed in the timeliness of the organization. They had noticed that almost without exception, whether in the North or in the South, wherever there was a black man succeeding in business, who was a taxpayer and who possessed intelligence and high character, that individual was treated with respect by the members of the white race. This fact suggested that in proportion as we could multiply these examples, North and South, a problem would be solved. This was the assumption on which members of the League took up the task and offered to them. They recognized that a useless, shiftless, idle class is a menace and a danger to any community. And that when an individual produces what the world wants, whether it is a product of hand, heart, or head, the world does not long stop to inquire what is the color of the skin of the producer. It was easily seen that if every member of the race should strive to make himself the most indispensable man in the community, and to be successful in business, however humble that business might be, he would contribute much towards soothing the pathway of his own and future generations. Before we go in deep, let's first pay homage to the men responsible for bringing this consortium of distinguished gentlemen together. 35 years after the Civil War, actually 45 years after the Civil War and chattel slavery ended, a group of black men in Boston, Massachusetts, might be your hometown, the neck of the woods, a group of black men were able to get together and formulate this business consortium for the purpose of creating an economic power base for Black America. While black codes in the South were heavily enforced, preventing many black men from participating in politics, and the Klan was forever lingering in the minds of black men, nevertheless, black men were setting the stage of creating an organization that not only served the interests of Black America, but was also used as the template Teddy Roosevelt used to create the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is now the world's largest business organization. Now, one of the things we need to acknowledge from the outset is that the National Negro Business League, a community-centered project, Booker T. Washington's focus was always centered around improving the masses of Blacks' everyday plight. From an economic perspective, as we will see, with Washington's National Negro Business League, Tuskegee Farmers Conference, and the building of the Tuskegee Institute and his projects in Africa, not only do we see Booker T. Washington as someone who was very much about the progress of Blacks on a national level, given that his economic model provided a framework for Black nationalism, but he also gave a framework for which Pan-Africanism through his international endeavors as well. To continue, Washington writes, it was evident also that the success of Negro businessmen was largely dependent upon and would tend to instill into the mass of the Negro people habits of system and fidelity in the small details of life, and that these habits will bring with them feelings of self-reliance and self-respect, which are the basis of all real progress, moral or material. These are powerful words indeed by Booker T. Washington. What Booker T. Washington attempts to do is set a cultural framework for Black men in business that not only would contribute to economic independence for Black people, but also contribute to their dignity and sense of self from an esteem and confidence standpoint. Washington was a man very adamant about the discipline of Black men in business, which is why his endeavors focused primarily on constant improvement of the business model of Black men, which we will see later. Washington's attention to detail was impeccable, and he wanted black men to not only do business, but also execute business in a pristine fashion. Washington very much understood the optics of the time and knew that black men not only needed to do business, but perform business in a way that would make the non-black consumer focus more on the product than the producer of said product.
Right.
You can jump in when you want to. Let me know.
No, I'm following along.
As Washington remarked about the spirit of the atmosphere, he writes, I have said that the meeting was practical. This spirit was expressed by a certain well-intentioned delegate who said to the assembly, you do not look like a set of men who are interested in resolutions. Thank God. You look to me like men interested in executions. This passage denotes the seriousness of the men a part of this enterprise. The impact of this meeting cannot be underestimated. 45 years after the Civil War ended and the passage of the 13th Amendment, which ended chattel slavery, black men had formed a business consortium around our economic interests as a group. This is a monumental feat, to say the least. There were many people expecting blacks to fail. Booker T. Washington's blueprint was not only designed to ensure blacks did not fail, but his plan was for blacks to excel collectively. Michael B. Boston, writer of the business strategy of Booker T. Washington, its development and implementation, backs this up when he writes, the experiences that Booker T. Washington shared with the rest of his race in his drive for upward mobility caused him to develop a group advancement philosophy in regard to African American entrepreneurship. He was never an advocate of pure individualism. Even during the age of laissez-faire capitalism, he always promoted the progress of his race and assistance for its least fortunate members. The formation of this mindset extends back to Washington's early years, when he first became aware that his race was an oppressed group. From the looks of things, Booker T. Washington's industrial education outlook was a piece of his overall entrepreneurial strategy for black men and black people overall as a group.
Hey, Rob, real quick, we are at the 50-minute mark. Did you? We got. Let me do this real quick. I want to just acknowledge. I want to just give acknowledgments. We got shouted out Ronan. We had Ike, Lonzo. We had Ant Johnson. Welcome, Willie. We got Jay Gammon in the house. Renaissance Man Jay Charles. Miss KP Bailey. How you doing, lady? Welcome. LOM in the house. What's going on? Say that again.
I said, give me a second.
Oh, okay, yeah, you got it. We got Little Rock in the house. What's going on? NC Worker, Mike V. What's going on? Nagone 11. What's going on? Eori, Richard Dixon. Hey, what's going on, fam? Give Rael just a second here. I wanted to give acknowledgments to everybody in the chat. I'm gonna check in with him, see when he wants to drop the link. He said about 45 minutes to an hour in. We're getting to that point, so I just want to check in. I might have to step away for a quick second, so I'm gonna wait for him to come back because we knew this was gonna kind of be a heavy deep dive. Nagone, there's an email I sent out. I want to say Renaissance, you, MOT, Mike V. All I did was I attached the that PowerPoint. I'm gonna bring back up here. Give me just a second.
All right, I'm back.
Okay. All right. Now look, I'm gonna have to step away for a second.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to send acknowledgments to everybody in the chat. I'm gonna bring the PDF back, the PowerPoint back up. But let me ask you something. When did you want to drop the link? Because you were saying maybe perhaps 45 to an hour in, we're hitting that point.
Mm, let's give it about 15, 20 more minutes.
Okay. All right. All right. Hey, go ahead and rock, dude. I'm gonna pull this back up. Go ahead and rock out, and I'll be right back.
All right. Okay. As I was saying, from the looks of things, Booker T. Washington's industrial education outlook was a piece of his overall group advancement strategy. Was always at the center of Washington's ethos. Boston Wright wrote, in understanding where this ethos of Washington's came from. Reflecting on his youth during the Reconstruction period, Washington wrote of his effects not on himself but on his race. In many cases, it seemed to me that the ignorance of my race was being used as a tool with which to help elect white men into office. Sounds familiar. And that there was an element in the North which wanted to punish the Southern white men by forcing the Negro into positions over the heads of the Southern whites. I felt that the Negro will be the one to suffer for this in the end. So Booker T. Washington is talking about how black people were being used at this particular time, because we have to understand in a larger context there was a big fight that happened during this time, which was the Civil War between the North and the South. And so he was very apprehensive of seeing black people being used in such a way, because he knew that we will bear the brunt of this particular being a political football, basically. So he did not want this to happen to black people at all. As we can see here clearly, Washington understood the pitfalls that awaited black men politically, which were borne out in the different race massacre that took place regarding politics and the black male right to vote during this particular time, was a cause for concern for many whites in the South, something blacks in the North, like Du Bois, who did not understand the racial dynamics on the ground between newly freed blacks and the whites who lost power in the South after the Civil War. Boston continues. Washington was right, because the Nadir's effect in the South were largely in response to African American advancements during Reconstruction, even in Washington's adolescent years, which were still during Reconstruction. The sense of group consciousness was evident. When he wrote of his decision to go to Hampton Institute, he made it clear that members of his community supported him. Even some of the older members who had been slaves most of their lives and had never thought that they would live to see a member of their group leave home to attend a boarding school, gave Washington a nickel, quarter, or a handkerchief. These impoverished people gave whatever they could spare to help him, and Washington was touched by their gestures. Throughout the remainder of his life, he held older people in high regard. Elders. This is a beautiful history to read. Washington's community-centric approach was formulated in his earlier years. As he matriculated Hampton Institute, and now he was able to get support, no matter how small, from the clearly poor blacks who supported him, almost as if he was a chosen son sent to advance the interests of black people economically and educationally. Through the support these elder blacks gave Booker T. Washington, he returned the favor by building institutions that reflected the need for practical education and economic expansion, as well as international business interests. So what's being said here is that the what you see in terms of the outward projection of what Booker T. Washington built in terms of Tuskegee, the Negro Farmers Conference, the National Negro Business League, was directly related to his earlier life experiences when he first set out on his journey going to Hampton Institute. It was a direct reflection of that support that he got. He felt an obligation and a duty to give back to Black people as a collective, based on this. That's why everything that he touched was truly community centric. It was as Boston noted earlier. It wasn't about individualism as it relates to the individual in capitalism that is pushed forth so much. He was group centric. Boston continues with, furthermore, in speaking and writing of Tuskegee Institute and its work, Washington never solely referred to what he was doing for the school, but what the school workers and he were doing together to uplift the group. Washington's role as a race leader, like that as a student and school builder, also reflected his sense of group consciousness. When he was asked by the board of directors of the Atlanta Exposition to speak at the opening ceremony of the event, he agreed to the request knowing that it carried a heavy burden. He was to speak before three very different groups: Southern whites, Northern whites, and African Americans. This was something Washington had not done before. He knew that one wrong word would negatively affect his race and would probably prevent another African American from being invited to speak before any prominent white Southern forum for years to come. Yet he still wanted to be truthful. He was aware that he had to operate like a skillful tactician to be successful. With this in mind, Washington wrote his speech, and his wife, along with the Tuskegee Institute faculty, listened to his speech and gave him helpful pointers. This strengthened Washington's resolve and eased his fears a little. So this was Washington going to community, Black people who were very much respected in the community leaders, wanting to know how best should he speak before the Atlanta Exposition, Cotton Exposition, because he knew the stakes. He understood what was at stake at that particular time. Before Booker T. Washington spoke on behalf of Blacks nationally, he sought the input of other Blacks, which I think is very important to note because it shows the humility Washington displays time and time again. Too many times you have Blacks who go out into the world thinking they speak on behalf of Blacks as if they are qualified to do so. Washington's willingness to do so shows he did not view himself as having all the answers by going before the elder Blacks and Blacks overall and getting their input regarding the forward progress of Blacks. There were Black who entrusted Washington with this awesome responsibility. He accepted reluctantly. After Washington gave his Atlanta Exposition address, he was shocked by the generally positive national reaction that it received, according to Boston. As most of the white press proclaimed him the new leader of his race, Washington never envisioned himself in such a position, replacing a historical figure as giant as Frederick Douglass. Yet after many hours of long contemplation, and because he felt that prominent leaders of the Reconstruction era had not offered an economic component in their programs, he willingly submitted to the request that he become the leader. In doing so, Washington continued his lifelong practice of doing whatever he could to help his race advance. But now on a larger scale, and reflecting on his Atlanta address 15 years later, Washington wrote, "I felt that we African Americans needed a policy, not of destruction, but of construction, not of defense, but of aggression. A policy not of hostility or surrender, but of friendship and advance. I stated as vigorously as I was able that usefulness in the community where we resided was our surest and most potent protection." Furthermore, Washington noted, in my opinion, the Negro should seek constantly in every manly, straightforward manner to make friends of the white man by whose side he lived rather than content himself with seeking the good will of some man 1,000 miles away. As we can see, Washington cared deeply and reflected intelligently on his role as a spokesman for blacks at this time and throughout his life. The people who gave Booker T. Washington their coins to support his education ingrained in him a sense of responsibility to black people. In terms of his economic outlook, the last thing Booker T wanted to do when he spoke publicly on behalf of blacks was to make it about himself. By using the Protestant work ethic as his template, Booker T masterfully put whites at ease and made them feel comfortable to donate to his endeavors like Tuskegee. This was not by accident. Washington knew he needed to make whites feel at ease, especially in the South, and using a strong work ethic is how he achieved his goal. Washington writes regarding his employment with Viola Ruffner. Not far from here, in the family of a noble white woman whom most of you know, I received a training in the matters of thoroughness, cleanliness, promptness, and honesty, which I am given credit. As I look over my life, I feel that the training which I received in the family of Mrs. Viola Ruffner was the most valuable part of my education. Employing a system of working and working hard without complaints were the greatest lessons that Washington received from Ruffner. He took these lessons and applied them to all realms of his work life, including his entrepreneurial philosophy, through which he would advocate operating businesses, including his own Tuskegee Institute, with a system. By giving Viola Ruffner credit first, Washington subtly is saying to his white audiences that he has been approved by her. For a lot of people who don't know, when O.J. Simpson was first used as an endorsement for Hertz rental cars, this technique was used in a commercial with an old white woman. The older white woman giving O.J. her seal of approval, it gave the audience the idea it was okay to trust O.J. and thus Hertz. What some people might see as selling out is really Booker T. Washington using emotional intelligence to get what he needed for blacks. This mindset, no doubt, was very much a part of the impetus for convening the National Negro Business League. The mindset blacks were more than capable of developing their own economic platform that served their interests first, but could go out into the market and compete with other groups as well. As Boston writes about Washington's influences, he states, the general economic milieu in which Washington lived was relatively consistent, meaning that industry was constantly and rapidly expanding. In Alabama, the iron industry flourished. In 1880, 205,000 tons of pig iron, a crude iron that was the direct product of the blast furnace and was refined to produce steel, was produced in Virginia and Alabama combined. By 1892, 1.5 million tons were produced in Birmingham, which was fewer than 200 miles from Tuskegee, was a key southern city involved in the iron industry, especially after the Tennessee Coal, Iron, and Railway Company purchased significant portions of the Birmingham iron mills and invested money in them. Birmingham became the top pig iron producer in the South and the nation and outcompeting northern firms in such cities as Chicago, Cincinnati, Philadelphia, and New York. Birmingham even outproduced the nation of Britain. Moreover, the number of manufacturing establishments generally increased from 1870 to 1900. There was a decline in the number between 1870 and 1880. Between 1870 and 1880, there was a decline in the number of established manufacturers. This was largely due to the Panic of 1873. By 1890, the number of manufacturers in Alabama had again increased. While the capital invested constantly increased at an accelerating rate. This environment Booker T. Washington lived in was rife with economic opportunities for blacks. He wanted blacks to get their share of the economic pie through participating in group economics. Boston references the capital investment regarding manufacturing in Alabama from Donald B. Dodd and Wynell Dodd's Historical Statistics of the South, 1790 to 1970, that showed in 1870 the capital invested in Alabama regarding manufacturing was $5,714,032.
Yeah, I'm back, bro.
Okay. In 1880, in 1880, $46,122,571 and 18 no 9 point let me go back. $9,668,008 in 1880, 46,122,571 in 1890, and $70,370,081 in 1900. This economic backdrop undergirded Washington's optimistic outlook regarding black people's prospects. Boston goes on to write.
So wait. At that time, he was talking millions.
Yes, in terms of investment in pig iron in
Yeah.
Alabama.
Yeah, he was talking big money.
Yes, hell yeah, at that time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, dude. Because think about it, at that time, those numbers you just threw out at that time, bro.
Yes.
That's a lot of money.
Right. And he understood that if he could churn out black men from a trade perspective from Tuskegee, that would give them the upper hand in actually getting those trade jobs related to those industries that will allow them to make the money, bring the money back to the community, and build the economic infrastructure of the group, which is his
Right.
overall model.
Right.
Boston writes, Washington experienced and read about the economic development occurring in the South, and it impacted his entrepreneurial ideas. He knew that the economic revolution in the South was at a relatively early developmental stage. So he was trying to get black men to get in early in the process. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Moreover, he felt that for African Americans to gain economic leverage in the South and in the nation, they had to seize the opportunities right at their doorsteps. In an 1891 speech in Washington, D.C., concentrating on the Southern Industrial Revolution, Washington proclaimed, "But let us for a few minutes take a somewhat different view of the subject and inquire what are the resources and inducements offered by the South as a field for business. Few, I think, will deny that the most important elements of wealth in any country are iron, wood, land, and climate. We do not, I fear, fully appreciate the rapidity and character of the material development that is taking place in the South, and now is the time for us to strike while this development is in comparative infancy." Kind of sounds like MOT talking about.
I was gonna say, because what he's talking about is acquisition of raw materials, right?
Yeah.
Because at that time, those were the base materials where a lot of things were built. Wood was utilized in construction, right? Ore and coal and these other materials were used for energy and heat production, right?
Railroad, all that.
Railroads, conduit wire, copper,
Yep.
right? All, you know what I mean. You see, so he was talking about being involved in the core resources of the industrial age at that time. See, today we talk about it in terms of like tech, or if we're going to talk actual mineral resources, we're talking about things like uranium, iridium, cobalt, stuff like that. Even well, why was he in Togo?
Right. Cotton.
Right.
Yeah. To compete against the white races in the South. Yep. With all the disadvantages presented by the South, we can find our way to the front sooner through Southern prejudice than through Northern competition. So he's saying right here, we got a better chance dealing with the prejudice white folks in the South with all the shit they got going on than we have going up north. Because he was actually against black people moving to the major cities. He thought that the cities were where a lot of black people lost their moral grounding, and so he was not really for that.
Well, it was resource flight.
Mm.
It was resource flight, right? So what you had was you had people who were more skilled in the let's just say the manicuring of the resources, right? In the South, right, where all the stuff is grown. Okay. In the North is where you had your processing and your banking and all of that. And what that environment did was it took you out of nature. And that's what he was speaking to. Like, you're going to lose that side of understanding, right? The resource aspect of nature. You're going to lose that, and you're going to get into, you know, the mundanality of processing stuff for purchase and consume and consumption. Yeah.
The foresight Booker T. Washington demonstrated is astounding considering the circumstances he came from. I don't think we can truly appreciate the foresight possessed by Washington, understanding the economic vibrancy happening in Alabama during this time, and how Washington recognized blacks needing to make sure they position themselves to take advantage of these opportunities. He also understood that in some ways they were going to have to work through the prejudice to get things accomplished for black. This meant that they were going to have to be prepared to compete in an environment that was not fair at all. In spite of this, Washington's position was to forge ahead and get things done because blacks had no choice. This was the only option presented to blacks at the time. Boston concludes, not only did the economic trends of the South and specifically Alabama impact Washington's entrepreneurial ideas, but the ideology of the African American leadership immediately after Reconstruction did as well. In other words, African American economic thought during the Nadir stressed self-help, racial solidarity, and looking inward as opposed to placing emphasis on governmental or philanthropic aid. So this is very important because he was a true finesse, man. Like, I'm gonna keep it real. Like, he was a true finesse, but ultimately, now we're talking about during this particular time. This is a period in time when black people were, truly backs against the wall type shit. Okay. But his outlook in terms of black people was long term. We do not want.
Dude, he was playing long people, game like a mug.
Not just that. He did not want black people to be dependent on government and philanthropy. Basically,
it was he didn't want. Okay, see, okay, look, I'm glad you said that. Okay, explain the difference between dependence and utilization.
Okay, so dependence is it's going to be generational. It's going to be generational. It's going to be ongoing. You know, utilization is taking that resource at that particular moment, utilizing it so you can disentangle yourself from that which you seek the help in the first place. So it's basically like this. It's the difference between enabling and helping. See, when you're getting help, it means you're already doing something that
Yes.
that help just help you achieve what you're trying to achieve. Enabling is just keep giving you this so you can keep doing what you
And
always
that
do.
is what he did not want.
No, he didn't want that. No, absolutely not.
Okay. All right. Wanted to point that distinction out because there's a, there's these perceptions, right, about Booker T. Washington,
Right.
and if we understand the mind of an industrialist, we understand that government is an intricate part of what it is that you do.
Right.
And that's why I was like, okay, is it utilization or right? Because I think he's speaking from the position of utilization.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He goes on to say, and looking inward as opposed to placing emphasis on government or governmental aid. The African American leadership consisted of teachers, preachers, newspaper editors, and politicians. Any individual that wrote or spoke out publicly about what African Americans had to do to lift themselves up during the nadir. Examples of self-help and racial solidarity during Washington's early adult years that reflect African American economic thought during the nadir are numerous. In 1883, Frank Wilkinson, the Southern correspondent of the New York Sun, impressed upon his readers, especially in the South, the value of buying land. He wrote that the time was right to buy land since it was relatively cheap and land speculators had not purchased it in mass. He further stressed that property owners were masters of their destinies. In concurrence with this writer, Frederick Douglass counseled African Americans to buy land and accumulate wealth as a sign of racial progress and civilization. The editors of the New York Globe, responding to a series of letters from a Southerner named Mrs. McDougal, wrote, "The only way for the Negroes of the South to improve their condition, to learn the industrial arts, and become manufacturers will be through their own exertions." In the same year, a large meeting of African Americans was held in Muskogee County, Georgia, to oppose a Negro rights protest convention that was to be held in Louisville. The consensus reached at the meeting was that African Americans should not concentrate on protesting the political rights denied them, but rather on being more successful farmers, manufacturers, merchants, doctors, lawyers, journalists, and so on. Negro office holding would follow in abundance. In response to another protest convention, which was presided over by Frederick Douglass, a writer contacted the editors of the New York Globe protesting the convention and its outdated methods of appealing to the sympathies of liberal and paternalistic whites. He wrote, "But the convention is a thing of the past now. And at this safe distance, I will say to the ex-delegates, gentlemen, I cannot see why you have met and would ask most respectfully, what have you done different from previous national colored conventions? What practical thing have you done to elevate the condition of the Negro race?" Offering what he considered a more viable and practical solution, the writer proposed that African Americans mimic the small hats, at least insofar as becoming successful merchants and traders. If the workshops will not open to us, the writer emphasized, must we stand outside and cry and hold conventions? Would it not be more sensible to buy a few apples and peanuts and keep a stand on some corner, or a few shoestrings, matches, and tin pans and put a pack upon our backs and become peddlers? In this writer's opinion, the commercial highway was the road to respectability. Thus, before Booker T. Washington was proclaimed the new leader of his race in 1895, following the death of Frederick Douglass, from 1874 on, there was a strong tendency in African American thought to focus on self-help efforts and racial solidarity, it was still accelerating in 1899 at the Atlanta University Conference on the Negro in Business, when John Hope in his paper, The Meaning of Business, wrote, "We must take in some, if not all, of the wages, turn it into capital, hold it, increase it. This must be done as a means of employment for the thousands who cannot get work from old sources. These influences from business expansion contributed significantly toward Washington's entrepreneurial philosophy, which will become an integral component of his leadership program." That's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Okay? That's a lot. Okay? Because what this represents is there were black people back then that did not want black people agitating a certain way. They didn't want them to do that. Because they understood, number one, there was a lot of danger, especially in the South at that time. And you literally could be putting people's lives in danger doing that. Okay? Like, you can be a Malcolm X and come to the South, and you could talk all that stuff you talk when you're in the North, but you don't have to live in the South. Okay? You got to be very careful, especially during this particular time. But what's surprising about this is the fact that he's saying that the typical mindset of the average black person at this particular time was economic development and self-reliance, not dependency.
It wasn't dependence. That's what I was saying. Is it utilization or right? Yeah.
That's what makes this so fascinating, because we have all heard the notion that black people can't work together, black people can't do business together, black people crabs in a barrel.
Utter
and
nonsense.
We have accepted this as a cultural defect. Okay.
Utter nonsense, though.
But the history doesn't prove that.
Exactly. Utter nonsense.
The history shows the complete opposite.
It shows the opposite.
And we're talking about people who were directly. Booker T. Washington was in slavery at one point. We're talking about people who were. You're talking about Frederick Douglass, who was in slavery. He was talking about get land.
That brother that's in the thumbnail of this live stream. Or you guys see? Yeah, that guy. Yeah, came from that. Yeah.
Yes.
That's what said to us, right? We're here in this time. He came from that.
Right.
And they didn't have like you said, there wasn't this narrative of we couldn't work together. There was the narrative we have to work together.
Thank you. There was no choice.
There was no choice.
Okay? So I want black people to be very clear about this. No longer, if you're listening to this, no longer can you or anybody that listens to this in the future, no longer can you say out your mouth that black people can't work together. But that's not true.
It's a lie.
It's not backed up by the historical record. If you're going to give credit for Black Wall Street, then you're going to have to give credit for the black people who came together and worked with each other to build.
And they enabled it to happen.
It didn't drop out the sky.
It just didn't. You didn't wake up one. Kind of like how bird scooters, right? Like the South Park made a parody episode where people just kind of got. They walk inside a store and come out, and all of a sudden there's all these bird scooters everywhere.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like it just didn't just poop. No. There was a precedent prior to.
Black people need to understand why this is so important. This is important because it goes towards your cultural confidence, okay? Your cultural esteem, okay? For so long, black people have been operating out here thinking that, man, we don't have a culture. Does this sound like men who don't know how to build culture? Regardless of the interference that took place externally, this shows that the men and even the women of this particular time understood the importance of building this kind of mindset and cultural framework, because Booker T. Washington was like, This might take 100 years to implement,
So
but
think
it's
about it.
necessary.
Perfect point. Perfect
He
point.
was doing his part to do it from the foundational level.
Perfect point. No, because he did his job.
He did his job.
He did his job. He did his job. Because guess what? We're 100 years. Aren't we? Aren't we 100 years past that
Yes,
point?
absolutely.
So we're here today. What the fuck is going on? Let's talk about it real quick, because I don't want to deviate, but I would damn near call that a prophecy.
Yes. Yes. Oh, it's gonna get good.
Hey, listen. You know, I'm trying to come up with another word to refer to it as, but I think the word that we can use that everybody can kind of conceptualize, right? Somebody who foretells something, right?
Right.
This guy right here. This guy right here.
He never sold us out. Okay? He never sold us out.
Never.
He never sold us out. Okay?
Never. Okay? Never.
Let's make that clear here. Okay? Because anybody that associates him with selling out, man, it's a problem.
I think that's the sellout.
It's a problem for me.
I think that motherfucker is the sellout.
And the main reason why it's a problem is because it shouldn't take for white writers to do the research on one of our own to show us who he truly is. Okay? Because you had certain males who didn't like his approach. We don't care if you don't like his approach. The question is, did his approach work?
Wait. Haven't we seen that mirrored in these sort of spaces here?
Yes.
Okay. I on the record, I just need. Go ahead. Continue.
And also,
I don't
too,
want to digress.
because even this same author later on, he talks about how the shortcomings that he may have had, he said, has no bearing on the competence he demonstrated based on the kind of environment he was operating in.
A shortcoming is subjective. One person's shortcoming is another person's strong suit, right?
He was not meant to save black people. He was not a messiah. Because this is what black people do. Black people are either you're my messiah or you're the devil.
You're a martyr for the cause, right?
You know what I'm saying? That's not what he was supposed to do. He wasn't supposed to save us. He was supposed to be a building block.
Well, here's the thing. He was a way shower. That's another term.
Yes.
We don't oftentimes associate with certain people in the black community.
Right.
Sometimes you have people who are seers and way showers, meaning show you the way. Listen, that's all I'm here to do.
Yes. Yes. He did his job. He did it. Okay. This is a very powerful passage in Boston's book because of the implications it has for modern black culture.
Mm-hmm.
There is the notion in modern black American thought that blacks don't understand financial literacy, can't work well together, can't build businesses together, when historically, as we are seeing, is the complete opposite of our history as a people, especially post-slavery.
Thank you.
When Boston states African American leadership thought during the Nadir stressed self-help, racial solidarity, and looking inward as opposed to placing emphasis on government aid and philanthropy. What he's saying is that during some of the worst times of the African American experience, Black people had a more independent mindset regarding economic expansion and did not want to be a people who relied on government and philanthropic aid. Type of
i.e.,
organizing.
a black Wall Street, right? What? Hey, why do we need a Wall Street? We can have our own Wall Street.
In other words, black people did not want to be a people viewed as a charity case.
Uh-oh. Oh shit.
Now,
You're about to piss some people off. You
hold
know that,
on.
right? You know that.
Now, who needed more charity? Black people now or black people back then?
Black people back then.
And they still did not want. We're talking about a people who were in slavery where you can't help but be dysfunctions, exhibit dysfunctions in a type of arrangement. But even coming out of that experience, you would have thought it was the opposite. You would have thought these people were more dependent minded.
And it would make sense for us to think that, right?
Right, it would.
That's what I'm saying. Like in today's context, it would make sense for us to think that. But we weren't of that time.
Right.
So we can't really identify. We're just trying to make sense of like what would be the best maneuver. But see, at that time, that wasn't their mindset.
No. And that's what makes it so fascinating, because everything that we hear from him is sellout. You know who the real sellouts in Black America are? The true sellouts in Black America are the ones who refuse to work with Black people to build institutions that protect Black people.
What Mike says, organize.
Businesses,
That's the
political
one.
action committees, using government to work on your behalf properly, not to use government as your inheritance. Government is a tool. Government is a tool.
Right.
And business people understand how to use this tool and manipulate it to our advantage. So that's what you're supposed to do. That's what smart people do. That's what ruling families do. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
For those unaware what the Nadir means, this was the period in African American history from 1877 through the early 20th century when racism, especially anti-Black racism, was more open and pronounced. So whenever y'all hear me say the Nadir, that's the period I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. That it ever had been during any period in American history. Okay? This would seem preposterous to believe that Black people were more of a financially literate people post slavery than we are now until we revisit Harold Cruz's rebellion or revolution.
When you have from what we're told, over 1 billion plus in spending power. Just bro, let's just pause this for a second, bro. Because how do you explain that?
It's now in this space we've been talking about what is bandied about now, skills and resources.
Right.
Booker T. Washington was all about that.
Mm-hmm.
As a conduit to ultimately get power from a political level too. This was just the strategy used to get to that point. So
wait, my bad. Alonzo said $1 trillion with a T. Let me recant. Let me recant. My bad, Alonzo. Go ahead, bro.
Cruz writes, time has proven that the issues first raised by Washington and Du Bois are still very much with us. Neither the civil rights of Du Bois nor the economics of Washington has won a full measure of acceptance. And the education problem on another level is more a bone of civil contention among the races than ever before. Moreover, even Du Bois's educational elitism was given a critical downgrading by Carter G. Woodson.
Oh, really?
The founder of the Negro History Week and the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. But fundamental to all issues growing out of the original clash between Washington and Du Bois. No, I skipped one. No, I didn't. Good. But fundamental to all issues growing out of the original clash between Washington and Du Bois is the central fact that has still not been resolved in Negro thinking. It is impossible to separate civil rights from the economics of the problem of Negro existence in America. Okay? And by civil rights and economics, we do not simply mean the question of jobs and discrimination and employment. The question goes much deeper. This was brought home to Du Bois more profoundly several years later after his conflict with Washington, when the Garvey movement came into being. For Garvey, even before he came to America, had been a student of Booker T. Washington's economics, which Du Bois had already said grew out of unusual economic development. This was an important observation on the part of Du Bois, for it is assumed by too many people of various political persuasions, both Negro and white, that there is something very strange in the idea that Negroes would want to develop a capitalist class, or that it is even necessary in terms of capitalist development that such a class should come into existence, or that Negroes should strive to cultivate a capitalist ideology. Here we see in Cruz's time the idea that blacks having a capitalist class was a ludicrous concept, had already became entrenched as a concept, even though, as we covered earlier, financial literacy was already a concept, a part of the black experience right after slavery.
Right.
Cruz goes on to say, these Negroes have been kept in ignorance about economic realities, not only themselves, but by their white, liberal, radical, and revolutionary friends from left of center to left. The liberals have promised full integration without economic integration above the level of token jobs, which makes it a lie. The white leftists have advised them to forget about the capitalist economics of the marketplace today and place their hopes on socialism tomorrow, which is a dishonest deception. It took Du Bois almost a lifetime to see through the first lie of the white liberals concerning civil rights. Washington saw through their tale by pure common sense reasoning. Right after Washington died, Garvey came on the scene. Hence, Washington's original black economy theories took on broader implications than he gave them in 1900. For now, the black economy theory was pushed onto the international scene and had to include the continent of Africa and the American Negro's relationship to that continent. As the previous sections note, in Boston's The Business Strategy of Booker T. Washington is Development and Implementation. Blacks had a racial solidarity mindset that focused on advancing black people through economics means first, politics secondarily. This idea that Booker T. Washington didn't care about politics is false and has been slanderous to his character. Blacks have been led to believe that Washington operated with an either-or mindset regarding civil rights and economic expansion, when actually Washington's philosophy evolved in an environment in which his economic sentiments were shared by many black people of that time period. From Washington's perspective, his economic philosophy centered around improving the economic lives of black people. The more successful blacks that existed economically, the more powerful the black community could be collectively. This was diametrically opposed by Du Bois's talented 10th idea, which centered around the idea that only a small group of blacks were capable of leading blacks forward. It is my view that this is where the notion that black men in the trade class are of a lower ilk than a professional intellectual class. Du Bois's talented 10 idea was a clash of classes between the first black to graduate from Harvard, which no doubt his liberal education gave Du Bois a sense of entitlement over Washington, which spilled over to Garvey, and a former slave who had a blue collar mentality and believed black people could collectively lead themselves. This,
I gotta speak to that.
I know you want to.
I mean, shit. I'm sorry, dude, but like your movers and shakers in the world are industrialists, right? I'm not saying that intellectualists don't have a part to play, but don't challenge an industrialist in his venue, right? I've seen Elon Musk take down intellectuals
Mhm.
as an industrialist. I've seen Bezos do it. I've seen dude. There's examples replete with industrialists who say, "Listen, not to say that you don't have a point, but you have sort of like a niche position, right? Just play it, because when you get out here and we're talking about exchanging resources between various continents and the inner workings of that's not your venue. It's not. And I don't know how well, obviously it was through various mechanisms of social programming and all of that, whatever, right? But I'm not sure how Du Bois was able to really kind of get that off to the point where we kind of see black the black community today.
Oh, it's very simple how he was able to get it off. It's very simple.
How?
He was able to get it off through academia and the press.
Well, okay, so and this is kind of
Absolutely.
where, all right. So I'm glad you brought that up, because those are going to be the mechanisms through which that happens, right?
Mhm. Right.
Not to say that academia doesn't produce industrialists, but that's typically in the engineering and technological sides of the game.
Have we not seen some of the most powerful industrialists, capitalists drop out major white Ivy League institutions to engage in business?
All of them, basically, all of them.
Steve
pretty
Jobs,
I was going to say
Zuckerberg,
Zuck,
Gates,
Gates,
Richard Branson. He didn't even finish high school.
Wozniak, Branson. What's his name? With McAfee. Okay, McAfee, that guy.
Who was that?
McAfee, the virus protection McAfee.
Okay. Yeah.
That guy. I'm just saying, across the board, pretty much all of them. Right. There was a realization that, the education path leads you up to a point, but at that point, if you understand that there's things that or that you might be at the cutting edge of development and engineering on, there's going to be people that come in with money and say, "Hey, listen, do you really need all that? Like, look, let's make some money." And that's why you have a lot of guys who will get into college, make some shit, somebody hears about it, and the next thing you know, they're CFOs, CTOs, CEOs, and what have you without a college degree.
Mm-hmm.
That's what.
Yeah.
John McAfee. Appreciate you, Iori.
Second floor rumor.
John McAfee. That's him.
A screaming silence fell down 3 flights and hit the
Yeah.
pavement. Couldn't last.
Hey, check this out. Are we at a point where we want to drop the link yet, or I'm just gonna go use the restroom real quick. I'm gonna need like just 3 minutes. I'm gonna go use.
Yeah, me too. We can drop it in. I'm gonna go through it, and people want to interject while we go through it. That's fine.
Okay, you want to go and drop the link?
Yeah.
All right. So let me do this. We'll go ahead and we'll have an intermission here. All right. So give me a second.
Like the student said,
Yo, hey man, this dope shit, bro, dope shit.
I told you, bro. I told you
Hey
I
man,
had to
dope
give it the
shit,
time,
dog.
man.
Dope
I
shit,
had to, I had
dope
to, I
shit.
had to really devote time to this because I wasn't one shortchange him,
I mean,
man.
we've been
Wasn't do that.
talking about it, but you know what I'm saying. I didn't really know because you know we didn't really chop on past. I think you may have read just a couple.
Yeah,
Pa-
I read you some
It was just a
passages.
couple, dude. I didn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm glad, dude. In all honesty.
yeah.
All right, so look, let's do this. We're gonna step away. Both of us gonna step away. Give us like 3 minutes. If y'all want to come on up, hit the link. Wait a minute, I dropped the wrong goddamn link. Hold up, I'm tripping. I'm tripping. Hold on a second. That's not the link. That's the link to the wrong link. Hold up, I forgot to do. Let's see, is it right here? All right, hold on a second. Why is this doing this shit? Oh, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. All right. Yeah, my dumb ass. Here we go. My apologies, y'all. That's the StreamYard link right there. All right, both of us gonna step away for a second. Just go ahead, suck up this jazz shit, and we'll be right back. All right, y'all. We are back. Well, I'm back. I'll wait for Rael to hop back in.
I'm here too.
Okay, I got a kiddo, man.
Oh.
So she's just like, "What are you doing?" Like we're dropping some science, babe. Okay. I had to take a little restroom break. So, all right. Well, look, man, we didn't have anybody hit the link here.
Okay, keep going.
So let me do this here.
Yeah, it's gonna be long, man. But hey, we're not gonna make y'all waste your time today. Y'all are gonna be very. After this stream today, y'all gonna do a lot of self reflection. I promise you. I promise you. This what makes this such a fascinating presentation is the inspiration that you gain learning about what he did. A lot of times when we look at that time period, we look at that lynching, we look at that, slavery and all the bad stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But we don't really focus on a lot of the good because the
Oh
bad
wait,
stuff that
hold
was
on.
happening to our people is no reflection on what we wasn't able to do as a people. Those are two different things.
Hold on. We just had hey, Brandon, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. I'm glad I caught that because I was about to pull the PowerPoint back up, and it would have been hard to see you. So I'm glad I caught you, man. What's going on, brother? How you doing, man?
No, I'm good. I'm good. How are y'all?
Good. I'm good. Ali Colon, you said the beats is hidden. Hey, Ryo, what I tell you?
All day.
I told you I was gonna get the sounds right for this one, dog.
Okay.
I appreciate you, Ali.
Mhm.
What's going on, Ren? Hey, so you got any thoughts, brother?
Yeah. I got a few thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
No, great. Great topic. I do think Booker T. Washington. I think he's a complicated figure. In Black history.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I think that I have to kind of push back on a little bit is his philosophy on. I think it was good when he advocated for things like organization, the importance of business, the importance of buying land and those things. Where he really loses me, and I think he loses a lot of his at least credibility around this, is around the Atlanta Exposition speech and the Atlanta riots that ensued. Because essentially he makes the argument that, hey, essentially his appeal to people in the South is, hey, basically be the laborer class, the skilled laborer class of the Southern economy. With his hope being, hey, if I forego any sort of political agitation, that I'll be able to rise people economically. People be able by people be able to rise economically. The
Well,
problem with that, oh, go ahead.
No. You continue. Then I wanna just kind of offer a retort to that. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, the only problem with that is that when you look at the South historically, the biggest thing, it's not really highlighted unless you really look at it and read about it. But the biggest thing that you could do that would be an affront to the South would be basically being considered uppity, getting out of your place in society.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start talking about the rise of a business class, that would have definitely been an affront to the social order in the South. You saw this with black soldiers coming back from wars and how they're greeted because they essentially have this status, this position of authority.
Mm-hmm.
You see it with like the blinding of Isaac Woodward and things along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And you also see it in Ida B. Wells Barnett when she talks about the number of lynchings, how the South tried to portray it as, hey, these black men were getting lynched because they were trying to get with these white women, when in all actuality a lot of these people were business owners.
Right.
So that's where, and like I said, when you have the riots in Atlanta, where you have like an Auburn Avenue, which kind of rivals a Tulsa, Oklahoma, in the sense of it's a business district, and you see black people who are basically attacked, their communities attacked and burned. That's where you have to have political power to have recourse against these people, coupled with you need it in general, just in business. Because even if you look at people like Medgar Evers, his brother Charles Evers, they own businesses, but when people found out of any sort of political activity or anything that they were doing that they were not okay with, they would attack those businesses via boycotts, via banks trying to call in loans, or just outright intimidation. So I understand that, that's his strategy. And really, I think the solution is you need both.
Well,
Um,
I was gonna say my argument to that would be that's actually what he did promote, right? Because see, I think it was W. Du Bois who kind of contextualized some sort of division,
Right.
when in all actuality, what he was trying to do was incorporate, because he understood what you just said, right? If you didn't have that other component, then we're kind of out here left in the open, right? With no recompense, no method for recompense, no legal, social, political representation, right? Right, and so he spoke to that. Right now, like let's look at it in the modern day context with the majority of large corporations and corporate enterprises. They're actively engaged in the political process, are they not?
Absolutely.
Right, and that's what he espoused. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Raul.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Ren, you guys go ahead. Go ahead. I'm
No,
sorry.
no. Go ahead if you have something to say.
No, I was going to
add.
pass it off to Raul.
No, if you
Well,
want to add to the retort as well, go ahead.
well, I think that's one of the main problems is that most people don't understand the mindset that he went into the Atlanta Cotton Exposition speech in the first place, which is why I covered part of that earlier. He went into the Atlanta Cotton Exposition speech specifically with that mindset because he had consulted with other Black leaders on what exactly did we need as a group.
Yes.
Okay? It wasn't just him making that determination. He didn't make that determination on his own. He went into the speech on behalf of the Black people and the Black leadership at that particular time, saying this is how you need to approach this speech. Because he was very reticent about doing the speech because he knew the stakes of that time. So what he wanted to do was carve out a position for Black people that was tenable for them. It wasn't the ideal situation. Of course, Black people would have wanted to be able to engage in politics and stuff like that. But you had to look at the political climate of that particular time. You just had a civil war. There was a lot of ill feelings towards Blacks in the South. You had the federal troops in the South that the racists in the South didn't like. So he knew this. So he knew that he had to approach this particular speech with a very nuanced position. That's something that a lot of Black people don't understand and give him credit for. This was a very emotionally intelligent speech. This is one of the most emotionally intelligent speeches one of our own has ever given, precisely because emotional intelligence is the ability to get others to do what you want them to do for you. And he was able to do that.
Ryle. Now, Doug's comment right here, I literally started to go here. I'm glad he did, so I'm going to highlight it, right? But essentially, how Asians operate. Okay, without going there, I mean, Doug just went there, right? And so we gotta think about the fact that
we can't look at those times with our modern day sensibilities because it's not going to work.
What I'm saying is that he actually espoused these notions, the things that we look at, like say, like the Asian communities, the Indian communities, Southeast Asian communities, and we say, well, look, they're doing it right. Why can't we do it? He was literally espousing what it is that they do today.
The thing I'd have to push back on that is that when you look at those two communities, I think you have to kind of delineate when you talk about the Asian population, and how the politics go, because it's going to vary by community, as far as within that ethnic group. But then also, when you talk about them as a whole big picture, you're talking about a large portion of those people who arrived with skills already in this country.
We're Renaissance.
We had skills coming out of slavery too.
I was
No,
going to say
no.
Rael.
When I
was going to say Rael because what we're talking about here is that following that ideology, we would have been the proto model for what Asians would have done. Oh, or you know what? Actually, let me recant. We were that.
Yes.
I would dare say that they got that model.
They did.
At the turn of the 20th century, going into the time of the New Deal, World War I, and all that. Who did they get that from?
They got it from us.
No. When I say skilled, I mean these are people who are basically been educated in their country already and are coming here. Like when Washington
understood, but
he's talking
following
about
that same model. But wait, following that same model, right? The people that were educated under the institutions, right, that was founded by a Booker T. Washington were what? American. They were here.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. They what did they? They're just mirroring. Mirroring what they saw, what worked for a small group in a larger in a larger country. Like from what we're told, we're only 13%, right? See, so these other groups come in as small numbers. Who did they model their successes after, coming into a foreign land that they were relatively unfamiliar to?
Hold on. Ho Chi Minh from Vietnam sat in on meetings for Marcus Garvey and took some of the stuff that he was espousing, which he got influenced by Booker T. Washington, and took it back to Vietnam.
Where's this coming from?
It's coming from us.
Because it didn't come from the white establishment, did it? Wasn't it the white establishment that actually went and tried to conquer the lands of these people who sought exile in coming here? They didn't come here to model the people that went over there and bombed the shit out of them. They looked at the minority groups that were here that were able to make something of something here, and they modeled it after them, which is us.
Right. Absolutely.
I'd have to push back slightly there too.
Go ahead.
There is an element of that, but they also have a culture that they're bringing with them, and then B, they have a foreign government to lock.
We had a culture too. That's the point.
That's what I mean. You can't overlay the modern situation of the time of the day. What we're looking at is how we lost our way. How did we lose? Think about it. Think about what he created fresh out of slavery, from what we're being told, right? Fresh out of slavery. Look at what we were doing. And what I'm saying is that in modern times, with our jobs, our remote working, and all this and all that, right now what we'll do is and not to say that these aren't things that exist today, but what I'm telling you is that we can't overlay what we're dealing with right now with that time.
No.
Wait, I think are you trying to say I'm talking about critiquing his ideology within the context of then. Are you trying to say that we should be using this now? Because I don't have any pushback there.
Well, I was going to say you shouldn't, because the United States government utilizes his model as the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
Here's the real question: did he leave institutions behind?
Yes, absolutely.
He did.
Then it worked.
Then it worked.
It worked. It worked.
They worked. His institutions exist past his existence. And the institutions today are educating and putting people in places where they could be a function of application and of purpose today.
I mean, I wouldn't argue that they didn't work, but I'd say that his context of getting those institutions to function still relied and were rooted in government, and
right.
That's
right, and it's the reason why they exist today. Because here's the thing, right? Don't all schools, all business, everybody has to interact and interface with government, do they not? I don't know of a business,
absolutely,
or an education system or anything that exists in this country today, right? That is completely isolated from any sort of government intervention.
Absolutely.
Right.
Okay.
Wouldn't disagree
Right.
with you.
Okay. So then that means that business and education and politics and all of these things are all intrinsically linked, are they not?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So what he was trying to do was espouse us integrating fully under our own power, not from a position of what was it, Rael, like begging and shit?
Yeah, dependency. You know,
Dependency. I'm sorry, not begging.
But I
Dependency.
dependency.
but I
Yes.
don't think
That
wait,
yeah.
but you all think that demanding that the government actually like treat people as citizens, like that's dependency?
See,
No, that wasn't
hold on. That's kind of why I didn't want people to come up here, because I knew people were going to come with that. That's not what he said at all.
That's not what he said.
That's not
No,
what
I'm
he said
asking.
at all.
I'm asking you.
No. If you listen to the stream, I specifically stated that he was not anti-politics. He wanted to use the foundation of a business platform to get strong enough economically so we can force them to do our money to do our bidding.
Just like
He was
all
not
the
against
other
politics.
institutions do.
He was not against it.
Yeah, but
The reason why Tuskegee was able to get funding for Tuskegee, because at one point they didn't get funding. Okay?
Nope.
The reason why they were able to get funding for Tuskegee was because one of the men that he worked with at Tuskegee went to two Democratic members in the legislature and said, "Look, I can deliver the black vote for you. And if you get elected, we want you to push for an appropriations for Tuskegee in the legislature." They won and they pushed for it and they got it.
correct. But I'm saying he wanted to give up political rights, and I'm saying
he did not want to give up political rights. That's not what he did. Stop doing that.
No,
that's not what he did. He never said that.
He was willing to sacrifice. Him and Du Bois basically had a disagreement behind what they needed to do to move forward.
No,
I said
Du Bois separated. He separated civil rights from economic expansion when it used to be one thing. And Du Bois did that. Booker T. Washington did not do that. Harold Cruz, I just read from Harold Cruz's book. He specifically stated that's not what Booker T. Washington did.
That's what I'm saying. We were reading the passages.
Washington does advocate because
I've done the research, man. I'm telling you what.
All right.
Wait. No, wait. Let's Renaissance.
Come on, man.
No, wait. Hold on. Renaissance. Go ahead and say it.
No. All I'm trying.
I'm literally telling you. I just quoted from the book where Cruz said that's not what he did.
Well, no, I'm saying, Ryo, he can go back and go. We can reference passages, right? We can. So I'm saying, but as it is right at the moment, go ahead, Renaissance.
No. All I am saying that when you look at his philosophy, he also got money from philanthropists. This is where I believe his name is Rosenwald, who was a big contributor to his to Tuskegee as well. So he was relying on philanthropist money as well to fund.
That's oftentimes how universities and things like that get started.
Hold on. See, this is where research really matters. He specifically said he didn't want black people to be dependent upon government and philanthropy. He never said he wouldn't use it.
I didn't say you're not letting me finish, Ryle.
You just said he used philanthropy.
But what he said was he actually had philanthropy as or philanthropists such as Julius Rosenwald, who was the owner of Sears and Roebuck, who served on several boards of trustees, and definitely sat on the board of Tuskegee as well. These were people that he used, and that he sided up with to help further develop Tuskegee. So as far as being dependent, no one said he's dependent. What he said was these were people who came and aided, who helped to aid and help to bring finance and other things that were very important into that. So we definitely had white benefactors that he utilized.
Yes.
And wait. Before we do that, because I wanted to actually welcome Nagone. What's going on, bro? How you doing, man?
Yeah.
How you doing? Welcome you up.
I just
we got a formality, but go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah. I just wanted to chime in.
Yeah. Go ahead. You got it.
So I just want to chime in so we definitely understand that and I'm listening to both of what you're saying, and I'm listening to what Renaissance Man said. Renaissance was not saying you were dependent upon that, but he did develop relationships with philanthropists. In fact, Julius Roosevelt, he was Jewish. He was a Jew. He was a Jewish man. So he was making some pretty nice connections there,
Carnegie, Rockefeller, yeah, exactly.
as well as working with the Republican Party, and he also was with was definitely friends with Theodore Roosevelt and Howard Taft and so forth. So he made a lot of good connections, which he was a smart man, certainly for what he was looking to do. But those connections were also very important to him.
And here's the thing about that, Nagon. Look, even people like Nikola Tesla. You guys know who his backer was? Because he had a backer. If you guys have ever heard of a company called Westinghouse?
And Edison, he had some
this is what I mean, because we got to go back to the time of the day. That's why I'm like, okay, you could say that about Booker T, but okay, but any preeminent thinker, creator of that time had somebody behind him. I'm not really sure what the relevance is, because everybody needs some sort of backing of some kind, unless they can self-create.
Just like a politician needs your money to run a campaign.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They need your campaign finance. So I'm like, oh, okay. I guess we can get off into the weeds in that, but I don't know. Is that
he didn't have one. He got a multitude. Also.
No, I'm saying, but so to Tesla, I'm saying like the most prominent was a company that today as Westinghouse. Right? They make the washers and the dryers and all this and all that.
Yeah. I'm exceedingly familiar with that, but I was saying, as far as when we're looking at when we're talking about either Du Bois or we're talking about Booker T. He made very, very powerful. I would say he worked with some very big philanthropists.
Yes.
Standard Oil magnates, Rogers, and Roosevelt, George Eastman Kodak, and all that.
Well, you gotta recognize too. He had one of the preeminent black scientists of the day, George Washington
Carver.
Yeah.
You gotta. That's what I mean. There's an intrinsic. Look,
these guys
what we have to do. Okay, we have to stop thinking that industrialism and capitalism and all these things, number one, are bad, and then number two, are not intrinsically linked and tied. They are. Academia is tied into industry is tied into defense is tied into government, vice versa. All this stuff is intrinsically linked, right? What we're trying to do is establish our position in it all. And we had it. We're highlighting somebody at the turn of the 20th century, right? We're talking fresh out of slavery. See, once again, I'm going to contextualize this that no one here today, living right now, breathing, talking on this panel, listening, or anything, has ever fucking experienced slavery as it existed at that time, as we understand it. None of you. So to come fresh out of that and to do this right here, I'm sorry.
Not for personal benefit.
I'm so sorry.
Group benefit.
I'm sorry. There was a whole different mindset that was preceding in black folks at that time. This is what's under analysis right now. What we keep doing is we keep interlacing our modern black culture mindset. When this modern black culture mindset didn't exist at that time, and at that time we see what we were doing fresh out of slavery. So there's something to be examined here.
No, I'm sorry.
No, that's why.
And I'm not arguing against you, Nicole. I'm putting this out here.
No. I had to take a call.
Oh shit. Okay. Handle it, bro. Handle it.
No. I'm okay. Go ahead.
Okay.
That's why I said earlier. There were black people when black people were having conventions that were specifically set up to agitate who were telling black people, stop that shit. Okay? There were black people who did not agree with that. Just like during quote unquote civil rights. You had the NOI whose founder was inspired by Garvey, who was inspired by Booker T, who was telling black people in the South they did not support that shit that they were supporting. Okay?
Well, Rael, what you have to kind of understand is the black community has never been monolithic in any one thought process.
Not at all.
So we've had people who may have supported, others who didn't. You had your Garveyites at one point in time. Of course you had your people on the boys. You had Booker T. There was really no one ideology, and quite frankly, all of them, in fact, as you really kind of link stuff together, could really work together. So you're gonna have opposition. That's just a major part of the game. What's that? You disagree with what?
The reason why I disagree is because when Booker T. Washington offered Du Bois twice the opportunity to come to Tuskegee to teach, he rejected him.
Okay, but people can disagree. They can have their disagreement.
That's not what I said. I said that's fine, but you didn't see Booker T. Washington form a group specifically like the NAACP to completely undermine Booker T. Washington.
Right.
He didn't do that to Du Bois. He didn't call Du Bois a sellout. He didn't question his manhood like that. That's a different ball game. You can disagree with me, but when you willing to go fuck with them white folks like that, and then you form a group to undermine, and let's be clear, this is not even the deep reason why he did it. The reason why he formulated the NAACP was very simple. He was jealous because what Booker T was doing was working.
I see that as absolutely ridiculous. But if you guys,
I got the evidence right here. And I got the evidence right here.
And if you guys want to argue, and if you guys want, I mean,
well, no, we're not. No argument.
That has been debated.
This is informing. This ain't debating.
That has been debated for decades.
Well, wait a minute.
This is not debating. This is informing. Have you done the research? Or have I done the research?
Wait a minute.
Very deep in that.
But this live stream is not about debating. This live stream.
And the boys was a fraternity brother of my fraternity. Honorary. No, you don't need to start cursing because we don't need to get into that because, quite frankly, you want to start having that kind of conversation.
No, that's not what that was. That's why I'm trying to dead the shit. That's why I'm trying to dead the shit because the actual live stream is about the cultural impact of Booker T. Washington, right? You see, so no, we're not gonna have a fucking conversation about that, right? So I'm gonna dead that shit right now, right? We're gonna get back to what this shit's really about, and that applies to everybody on this panel. So we're gonna get back to what this shit's about because you see, what we can do is we can get off into the weeds, and we can get off into the weeds in that shit, right? But see, that's not the intention of the live stream. See, the intention of the live stream is to utilize Booker T. Washington legacy as inspiration and motivation to do the things that this channel has been espousing for the last 5 years. Okay, that's what this live stream's about. That's why I'm like, no, I'm gonna dead that bullshit. We're not doing that. Nah, fuck that. So y'all got it, but we're not doing that shit.
Let me continue.
Hey, can I?
Let me continue.
Wait. Just go ahead, Renaissance. Go ahead. Let Renaissance get in, and then go. You got it.
No. I'm gonna jump down. No, if that's where it was going, my bad for taking it in the wrong direction. I apologize. I'm gonna let y'all get back to it. Thanks for letting me come up.
All right, no problem, brother.
A complex.
Yo.
Yeah, listen, man. I'm out, bro. But anyway, listen. Thanks for letting me up as well, man. I appreciate it.
All right, no problem.
All right.
I just wanted to make sure that we stayed on the spirit of what this live stream is going to be about, right? So I salute to Renaissance man, salute to Nagon. If the spirit of the live stream is essentially the cultural impact. That's why it's literally titled that, right? So what we're not trying to do is that's why I was like, okay, well, we can kind of we can get off into what it is that we've observed from the things that have transpired from that time to today, and then kind of compare and contrast it at this time. But that's a different
You
conversation.
know what pisses me off, man? To be honest with you, man, I'm looking to real. What pisses me off, especially about a lot of dudes in these spaces that talk about, blue collar men specifically, they advocate the cause. You had this chick come out about here about the bus drivers and all this other type stuff. And a lot of cats, man, really, they try to feign like they really support those type of people. But this is a man who actually represents those types of people. And the same people who claim that they support him be the main ones denigrating. The shit pisses me off.
I,
It pisses me off because
and that's why it's kind of like, dude, sometimes if we don't stay more general with it, then it becomes like a sort of like a nitpick. Well, he did this, he said
yes,
this,
that's my point.
and yeah, and you see in my head, yeah, and in
Anybody
my
can look at the past and nitpick at somebody. Like black men should not be defined by what they didn't do. Okay.
well,
Like
even if that were the
be
case,
defined by the good deeds that we do. Like that's how we should be. And based on good deeds, this man got good deeds in spades. If you want to, if your argument is, well, he didn't approach the politics this way, dude, you wasn't living during that time.
well,
You don't know the environment in which, when he went to go speak before people, his life was in danger. When he spoke on behalf of black people, he literally was putting his life on the line. Like
that's kind of my argument, right? It's sort of like we are of this time. We weren't there at that time. So me being of this time, what I do is I look at what he did as inspiration for me, because if he could do that at that time, guess what the fuck I can do? Okay. And that's how I take it, man. It's like I really I don't like to go back in the past and then say, well, you didn't do the dude. I wasn't there to scrutinize to say whether that sort of opinion is valid or not. Like, dude, that's just really not. It's not of me and of today. It's sort of like who was the preeminent maverick? Who are the preeminent mavericks in industry? Who were the preeminent thinkers? I'm not even saying Du Bois is all bad. I'm not. In contrast to what we're talking about in this live stream, because we're really sort of highlighting what it is that he did, not only industrially speaking for black men, but what he did for the country. I made the point. I was like, dude, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce models their whole shit after his setup. Right? That means some shit.
Right? That's some god body shit. I'm sorry, bro.
Dude, your United States U.S. Chamber of Commerce, they're modeled after his shit. It's like, wow. That's why I'm like, no, I'm kind of speaking more to what do we extrapolate from what it was that he was setting at that time, because look, he was facing a lot of battles and shit at that time to do what he did that we don't face today. We have different ones, yeah, but it's not the same.
It's the same argument has been playing out since that time. That's the reason why I told you I had finally found what that shit was that we kept running our heads up against. I finally found it. And this particular exchange is proof. It's like no matter what, like I said before, man, a man. I'm reading stuff where even white folks are saying like, yo, anything that he didn't do well should not be something used to not be held against him.
Dude, Steve Jobs, right? He's heralded as a tech maverick, and at the same time, dude, gets a lot of shit for being a complete asshole. Right? You can't please everybody.
Right? Like, damn. Like,
you can't please everybody. I'm sorry, and I gotta be real with you. I read the book on Steve Jobs like back in 2008, I think it was 2007, 2008, right? And that's what got me to kind of accept even my own shortcomings,
Right.
right? Because we can't be perfect. When you're perfect, you're in stasis, and once you're in stasis, you're dead, right? You see, so there's gonna be these things that people are gonna. I understand, but we have to sort of look at the sum total of the body of the work, right? We have to look at the sum total of the body of the work. His institutions still stand today as an HBCU.
There is no Tuskegee Airmen without Tuskegee
Without him.
Institute.
Right. There's the work that Carver did
Come
with
on,
the
bro.
Tuskegee Institute. It's like, listen, again, the Renaissance. This is not. I'm not focusing on you guys specifically, but again, this was titled the cultural impact, right? And like I said, if the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, their whole model is based on what it is that he created, like shit. Because look, we're using it today. My ability to engage in business, how I do it globally.
The largest business
I have to thank him.
organization in the world.
Okay,
Come on.
I have to thank him. We're never gonna have like perfect coordinates on any matters. I can't think of a society where that does take place, where we're just everybody just right. They're protesting in Israel right now. I can't find. That's why I'm like,
Let's move on.
let's move on. Let's move on.
Let's get back to the show. And please be patient with us. Like I said before, it's gonna be long. You're not gonna be disappointed because we're gonna settle this once and for all. And from here on out, every man and woman who listens to this, you're gonna have to make an individual decision for yourself of who you want to rock with after you learn the greatness of the people who went before you. Because if we're gonna give civil rights people all this credit, well, we're gonna give some black capitalists credit too. Okay. I said earlier, this is backed up in Boston's work when he states the following regarding Washington's practical business. Influences that impacted Washington's entrepreneurial philosophy. Business persons whose entrepreneurial activities impacted Washington's thinking are what is meant by practical business influences. According to Washington, when he arrived in Tuskegee, Alabama, he met the African American man who was largely responsible for the founding of Tuskegee Institute. This man had a significant impact on Washington, like the business growth throughout the nation and in the specific state of Alabama. The man's name was Lewis Adams, and he was a former slave of great intelligence and thrift. According to Washington, a jack of all trades, laborer, and writing about Adams, Washington referred to him as a mechanic who had learned the trades of shoemaking, harness making, and tinsmithing during the days of slavery. So he's basically showing the skill set that a man like Lewis Adams had coming out of slavery, which is what I was talking about earlier before. Adams worked out an agreement. This is what I was talking about before as well. Adams worked out an arrangement with two white Democrats who were in the Alabama legislature, in which he assured them the African American vote in Tuskegee, provided that if they were elected, they would fight for an annual appropriation of funds from the state to open the normal school in Tuskegee. The two politicians won and got an initial appropriation of $2,000. Lewis was an extremely important influence because he was likely the first individual in Tuskegee who not only impacted Washington's initial entrepreneurial ideas, but reinforced his Hampton Institute teachings as well. Washington was very impressed with Adams and considered him the embodiment of genius and thrift. Adams, due to slavery, never spent a day in a classroom, but Washington still considered him a wise man. So this is completely against the talented tenth ideology. Okay,
Right.
okay? He's not saying we it's
There's only a tenth of us.
us.
There's only a tenth of us, right, that are actually equipped to do anything.
Right.
He's looking at utilization of talents and skill sets, right, i.e., human resource.
Right. Okay. He saw the genius in the most common man coming out of slavery. Okay. He had a very high conception of what black men represented at that point, which is ironic because of what we were coming out of at the time. Commenting on him in a speech before an 1884 meeting of the National Education Association, Washington proclaimed, "In Tuskegee, a Negro mechanic manufactures the best tinware, the best harness, the best boots and shoes, and it is common to see his store crowded with white customers from all over the country." His word or note goes as far as that of the whitest man. Adams exemplified for Washington what he had learned as a student at Hampton Institute and what he came to know after he graduated and taught at Malden. There is a real difference between studying about things through books and learning things themselves. Without the medium of books, Adams opened a hardware store in the middle of downtown Tuskegee, starting small and expanding. Black and white customers throughout the town of Tuskegee and the surrounding area were dependent on him for goods and services, making him valuable to the community. His business acumen allowed him to be considered an honored and respected citizen. Adams also represented for Washington that dying generation of former slaves who had learned numerous trades. Adams was the epitome of Washington's entrepreneurial philosophy. He underscored what occurred when African Americans made themselves indispensable assets to their communities. Because of this, Washington not only referred to him extensively in his writings and speeches, but placed him on the initial Tuskegee Institute Board of Trustees and the Tuskegee Institute faculty. Okay? So this was somebody who had no formal education, no PhD, no master's degree, but Booker T saw the wisdom in this elder black man who helped him. He showed his respect for him by putting him on his board of trustees at Tuskegee. Okay? Commenting further on Adams, Washington wrote, "The leading citizen in Tuskegee is Mr. Lewis Adams, to whom the honor should largely be given for securing the location of the Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute in the town. Mr. Adams is not only an intelligent and successful businessman, but is one who combines with business enterprise rare common sense and direction. In the most trying periods of growth of the Tuskegee Institute, I have always found Mr. Adams a man on whom I could rely for the wisest advice." What did I say? What did I say to you, Complex?
Mm-hmm.
I said to you a long time ago. In business, there is nothing like having somebody that you know you can trust 100%.
Yep.
That's who this man was. Washington knew he could place his full trust in Adams. And that's why he rewarded him by placing him on the board, because he needed him just as much as Lewis needed Washington. He enjoys the highest respect and confidence of the citizens of both races, and it is largely through his power and influence that the two races live together in harmony and have peace in the town. Washington in this section demonstrates his willingness to tap into the elder blacks, those who survived the plantation who had practical knowledge to help advance the interests of the group. The deal Adams worked out with the two white Democrats is an example of black men using practicality Practicality means to secure appropriations from the state legislature for Tuskegee, helping Black men overall. Regardless of the party in power, especially the very party that had just fought a civil war to keep Blacks in slavery, Washington's mindset was centered around bringing practical solutions to Black people's problems. Lewis Adams is another example of the wisdom many enslaved possessed who could contribute to the community in ways dwarf the contributions of the intellectual class of Du Bois's ilk. Other practical business influences to Washington's entrepreneurial philosophy were people like William H. Baldwin Jr., who Boston writes was an individual who reinforced and expanded Washington's entrepreneurial philosophy, specifically the component that called for employing a good work system. People in business, we understand systems. Okay? According to Washington, Baldwin was the sole individual responsible for placing Tuskegee Institute's financial statements and operations on par with general accepted accounting principles, business methods that will be accepted to any of the best banks on Wall Street. Baldwin became a trustee in 1895, the year that Washington was catapulted into national prominence by his Atlanta Cotton Exposition address. Baldwin's influence was of critical importance not only for the further expansion of Tuskegee Institute, but also for Washington's success as the national leader that he became. As a board member, one of Baldwin's first influential and important acts was to contribute toward the strengthening of Tuskegee Institute's financial condition. He strongly advised Washington, as principal of Tuskegee Institute, to hire a competent auditor, someone who could carefully examine the school's financial operations and offer concrete suggestions for improvement. Expressing concern over accountability to donors, Baldwin wrote to Washington, "You are handling sufficient funds to demand the greatest care, as any loss or improper accounting from any cause will strike a blow at your institution that you could not overcome in a great many years." Boston clearly demonstrates that the business endeavors of Washington were not mediocre in design and incompetent in scope. Washington recruited a Black man in Baldwin who wanted Tuskegee to be a solvent institution that would last and be sustainable. This is evidence that even at this period, Washington valued a professional standard that made no excuses regarding the execution of his business model. Boston continues when he writes, according to Washington, Baldwin's systematic method of requiring that Tuskegee Institute be operated according to generally accepted accounting principles was his greatest gift to the school and to himself. The fact that Tuskegee still stands is a testament to the foundation of principles set forth by these great men. Not only were they trying to sustain an institution for Black people, but they also had to demonstrate competence to mostly white donors, as well had to fight against those racist whites who expected their failure. Other contributors to Washington's economic philosophy were men like David Rockefeller, who Boston writes, the shrewd bookkeeper businessman and Standard Oil executive agreed with Washington's Protestant work ethic principle. He began giving funds to Tuskegee Institute in the 1890s, and he and his descendants were among the principal philanthropic contributors to the school. Finally, his, meaning Washington, early experience of helping to develop Tuskegee Institute along with his lessons from Mr. Baldwin had taught him well. To show Rockefeller how he mastered all loose outer edges or fringes, something Rockefeller advised Washington to do, when Rockefeller gave Tuskegee Institute $34,000 for the construction of a building in his name, Washington and his staff so efficiently planned and constructed the building that they saved $249. Washington sent the unused balance back to Rockefeller, which impressed him deeply. He, in turn, had it sent back to Tuskegee to be used as needed. Moreover, Washington indicated that he had studied the business methods of large business concerns, such as Rockefeller's firm, the Standard Oil Company, and had learned much from them. Business is a language. And what Washington demonstrated was not only a mastery of the language of business, but he also demonstrated mastery of emotional intelligence by understanding the emotions of others, like Rockefeller, by sending the check back to him, because it demonstrated to Rockefeller that Washington was not someone who wastes money. And to a businessman, giving philanthropically, this communicated to Rockefeller that his money was utilized fiscally and responsibly. Boston continues regarding Washington's influences. Hold on, before we go there, that's very critical for people to understand. When you're soliciting funds from people with money, one of their primary concerns is about giving money away is people wasting their money. So by Booker T. Washington sending that $249 check back, he demonstrated to them that he was utilizing their money in the most efficient way possible. So what does this allow you to do? It allows you to come back to that very source to solicit more in the future, which is what he was able to do and build what he was able to build for Black people, because he understood the language of business. If you got something to say, you go on.
Mm-hmm. Say that again, bro?
I said, if you got something to say, you can go on. I'll keep on. I didn't know if you wanted to interject.
No. I was just reading this comment right here because somebody came in. I had to block.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I had to block some stuff here. I was just looking. Yeah, he showed he was using what he needed, nothing more. Yeah, that's Black Dev.
Okay.
Now, I will say this, bro. We are coming up on 3 hours, bro, and I am going to have to go handle some shit here in about 20, 30 minutes. So if you want to do a part 2 or an addendum, we can. Or
we don't have to extend it to a part.
We have to extend it. Okay. All right. Because, yeah, I'm going to have to handle some shit here in a little bit.
Okay.
All right.
No,
you good. We got a cool 30. Let's go.
Collis P. Huntington, the millionaire railroad magnate, also began donating funds to Tuskegee Institute in the 1890s. His first donation was only $2. Washington wrote that he did not get upset or become disappointed, but instead became more resolved to show Huntington the value of Tuskegee Institute work. Employing a strategy learned from Baldwin, Washington sent Huntington a copy of the Tuskegee Institute's annual report. Huntington was very impressed with the business-like precision with which Tuskegee Institute was operated, writing in his return letter, "Where shall we get another Booker T. Washington?" With Huntington's approval, his wife decided to donate $50,000 to Tuskegee Institute for the construction of a girls' dormitory in honor of the Huntingtons. Huntington informed Washington by letter in December of 1898, "You are doing great work, and I think you will continue to do good work if you keep on the lines of economy, which I believe you have followed all these years." Moreover, he stressed to Washington to begin at the bottom and work up. As Huntington deduced, Washington had been practicing economy for years and would continue to do so until his death in 1915. And long before he met Huntington, his life epitomized moving up from the bottom. In exhibiting his economy for the Huntingtons, along with establishing a sound foundation, he stretched their $50,000, creating a girls' dormitory, which not only far exceeded their expectations, but was one of the best and most attractive buildings on the Tuskegee campus, and it was built by students. Okay. Washington demonstrates once again how he was able to influence whites with money to support Tuskegee as well as other business endeavors with the intent to help Black people. Boston backs this up when he writes, "Due to his financial relationship with these businessmen, Washington was an attentive listener and a shrewd operator who would use what he knew and what he learned. from these men to develop, expand, or reinforce an entrepreneurial philosophy that he hoped would serve to advance his own people. Once again, we see that Booker T. Washington's economic philosophy is inextricably tied to the success of Black people's future. As Boston writes, the ultimate aim of all Washington's philosophy was to bring about the inclusion of African Americans into the very fabric of mainstream American society. Thus, his complex activities in arduous time can easily be misconstrued. Washington behaved as a technician with humanly flaws, finding opportunities within, disadvantages, as historian John Flynn has so accurately suggested. Montgomery probably worked with the same intent in mind, especially since he was a close ally of Washington's. Ultimately, his economic activities reinforced Washington's entrepreneurial philosophy, particularly pertaining to self-help. The glass half full approach of Booker T. Washington positioned Washington to take advantage of opportunities that appeared even when the obstacles seemed insurmountable. Instead of focusing on the things in the environment that worked against African Americans, Washington focused on the opportunities that provided Blacks with an opportunity to advance economically. Boston backed this up, referencing Washington's own words when he writes of Washington concerning Charles Bank, head of the Mississippi branch of the National Negro Business League. Washington states, "I have learned much from studying the success of Charles Banks. Before all else, he has taught me the value of common sense in dealing with conditions as they exist in the South. I have learned from him that in spite of what the Southern white men may say about the Negro in moments of excitement, the sober sentiment of the South is in sympathy with every effort that promises solid and substantial progress to the Negro. This lesson will be an integral part of Washington's entrepreneurial philosophy, and his respect for banks continued to soar. All of these individuals, the business people on the Tuskegee Institute Board of Trustees, National Negro Business League members, and others, confirmed to Washington that his entrepreneurial philosophy for the advancement of his people was the correct one. The idea that Booker T. Washington was a sellout needs to be put to bed once and for all. This goes beyond mere character assassination. The reason why it goes beyond that is because, quite frankly, all one would have to do is a cursory study of the works of Washington, and one can easily see that Washington had the best interests of African Americans at heart. I believe that the sinister act of labeling Washington as a sellout or accommodationist is an attempt at eviscerating Washington's blackness and masculinity, as Du Bois did when he couldn't defeat Washington's practical strategy that was producing tangible results for Black people. The tradition of questioning Black people's authentic Blackness due to their political affiliation, strategies they employed, addressing Black people's concerns, and taking the wrong views according to them. See, what we have had since the days of Du Bois were two types of Blacks. We have one Black like Washington who doesn't assume he can speak on behalf of Blacks. Washington was given the awesome responsibility of speaking on behalf of other Black leaders who were respected, who delegated authority to him. Before he spoke before the Atlanta Cotton Exposition, as I noted before, he sought the input of that leadership class of Blacks and gained the confidence to speak on behalf of Blacks after he sought this wise counsel. Then you have a Black intelligentsia, a know-it-all class of Blacks who have this messianic approach towards Blacks, best exemplified by Du Bois's talented tent theory, which centered around the notion that Black men that have cultivated the ability to become leaders of the Black community by acquiring a college education, writing books, and becoming directly involved in social change. Notice what's missing. Do you see industrial education in this description of so-called elevated or elite Black men?
Nope.
The irony is, in this description, Washington exemplified the qualifications deemed worthy for being a leader in Black America, but was viewed as the opposite of this embodiment by the likes of W.E.B. Du Bois. As Boston notes, most of the studies done on Booker T. Washington have concentrated exclusively on his views concerning industrial education, or his supposedly accommodationist leadership stance, either supporting or opposing Du Bois's famous critique. These studies, however, do not even begin to fully explain another core aspect of Washington's leadership strategy. His entrepreneurial philosophy, a plan he developed by 1891 that emphasized duties rather than rights. Most importantly, Washington's entrepreneurial philosophy has not been analyzed deeply from a business perspective. Now, we've talked about this before. You have people who have no conceptualization of what business is, what the rules of engagement are, what goes into being in business whatsoever. Criticizing somebody whose complete philosophy was about business and business formation in terms of creating a platform for Black people to become ultimately free in the system. So when you critique Booker T. Washington, you can't critique Booker T. Washington from the strategy of, well, he wasn't a Malcolm X. You're right, he wasn't, because he had his own mission that he needed to do.
Exactly.
He had his own mission. That wasn't his mission. His mission was an entrepreneurial philosophy that he wanted to embed in the whole of Black America. So
particularly those who were looking to create and do for themselves, right?
Exactly.
They created a whole entire e-commerce, economic infrastructure, which then became the model for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
And that's where I'm kind of like, all right, if it was good enough for the United States to use it as their Chamber of Commerce model, why wasn't it good enough for us?
Right. Yep. And see, when you talk, because we know we have all been, and we've heard all these pro-bliggity Black people that have come down the line. And the reason why they keep coming down the line is because Black people are not following the footsteps of what Booker T. Washington set forth as a collective. That's the reason why we keep regurgitating these same types of people that in most instances are not to be taken seriously. They're not. They're not. And we have to really come to grips with that, you know? And looking at it from that particular perspective, like you really have to give this man his flowers, because like Harold Cruz talks about how his actual business and entrepreneurial philosophy is a form of Black nationalism.
Well, anytime sort of like a business is formed within this sounds quixotic, I get it, but that is very much the case, right? Anytime an Asian person has a business, you look at it as an Asian-owned business.
Thank you.
Okay. And then fill in the blank with the rest. So you could argue that the same applies for us to some extent or some degree.
If we don't do it, if we don't do it, we will have 60-plus-year-old men in spaces like this thinking that Curly can save us.
Yeah, because you know there's literally nothing your Black ass can do, right?
You need a 26-year-old white female YouTuber to advance your cause.
A modern woman, mind you.
A modern one, okay?
Yeah, one of those. Sure.
That's
okay.
Not.
All right, asinine. Yeah.
That is a complete abdication of your masculinity. When you say that openly for the world to hear on a platform, that
dude, no one fears you. No one fears you.
You are not to be taken seriously.
You're no one's gonna fear you.
You are a clown. Okay?
No one's gonna fear you.
Right?
You're literally, it's just like, okay, that's nobody. Just like that. That's
Yep.
nobody.
Yep. That's exactly
That's how easily dismissed you are.
right.
Yeah, that's, oh wow, look at this guy. He's nobody. He's nobody to be concerned with.
Right. And be the main type of person who thinks they have the wherewithal, the right to criticize somebody of Washington's ilk. Like when you have never built an institution. Never.
Look,
You have not engaged, and we know why you don't engage in it, because business, you know what I'm saying, outside of just full out physical war, is the ultimate man sport. Ultimate. If you ain't got the masculinity in you, you ain't gonna do it in business. You ain't got it. You don't have the consciousness to do it. You do not have it inside you. So when the men who do have it inside them decide to engage in that battle, it's best you keep your mouth shut and play the sideline like you're doing, because you're not ready for that battle. You're not ready to engage with that. You're not ready to pull that sword. That's a whole different ballgame, because business is warfare. It's a war. It's a war over resources.
nonviolent warfare.
It is war. And if
Hey,
your
we can we
your
can we
claim to
can we
fame
can
is
barter and
just
trade and agree, and or we just fight each other and then take each other's shit. Which one?
right, right, because that just to kind of relate it to that Pearly situation, like this whole entire space should have been embarrassed by that particular situation. But when you're not engaged in this level of thinking, creating, building, you have a lot of time to engage on silly crap like that, because you're not in the game. And it's okay, you decide not to be in the game. Okay, cool. Don't talk as if you are in the game though, because you're not in that game. This is a game for men. Your dad can build a financial empire. He could be worth $1 billion. If you don't understand the game in which he got that money, he can hand you 500 million and you still want to go broke because you don't understand the game. This is a mindset game. You have to understand. If you understand that it's a game, you got to understand what's the rules of the game. Booker T. Washington was trying to show black men and overall black people, because he had black women in the National Negro Business League too, like Madam C.J. Walker and Maggie Walker. So he understood the game. And so this is why you had black women who came out of the National Negro Business League who built finance companies and things of that sort, because they were around the true intelligentsia of black people, and those were the industrialists, the capitalists, who have to understand the lay of the land to best navigate that land. An intellectual doesn't have to understand the lay of the land. They can't. They're too limited. In business, you best believe you better understand the lay of the land. You're not going to be successful at all. And this is what really needs to be brought to bear with this particular conversation. We definitely are going to have to revisit it some more, because it's a whole lot more. Probably going to have to do about maybe 4 or 5 different ones, and just have them just in one, basically folder on here, so people can go from like 1 through 5 or 1 through 6, however many it comes, because this is something that we definitely need to impress upon black people as a whole, so black people don't come out here really talking what they really don't know. I myself, I used to be a black person that didn't think black people could work together either. Like for real. And then I got schooled by research and had to really retract that. Like, wait a minute. So that it's not a cultural defect while we're not working together.
No, it's not, bro.
It's a choice.
It's not, bro. It's like, look,
It's a
dude.
choice.
It was the opposite for me, man. Like the first shit I got off into, man, when I did some stuff in adult life, was with the cats that I grew up with. Okay, these are dudes I knew since I was like 12, 13 years old. They came out of high school. Some cats was in college. Some of us weren't. But we did what we did, right? Coming up, and we went into adulthood. We did it together, man, and we did some shit. You see, so I learned early on I can do shit with my brothers. That's what frustrates me.
That's the blueprint.
That's the shit that kills me, right? Because see, my experience is that, well, when I first, my first little come up as a young man was literally with the cats I was in middle school, junior high, and high school with. And even to this day, dude, they're intrinsically linked to this platform right now, right? See, so I've never, ever thought that I couldn't do shit with my brothers. I've never thought that because I can point to when I did it, right? See, so I'm speaking from experience.
Yeah, I mean, outside of the context of hip hop culture, yeah. Absolutely.
Well, no, I'm just saying that translates over, right? Because if I can do it there, why, if I could do that there, why the fuck can't I do it anywhere else?
I mean, you've seen it in hip hop when the MC got on, when he got established. What did he do? He brought his brothers on too.
Brought his
crew on. All right, now it's your time. You Wu-Tang. Okay, now it's time for you. Okay, Meth, you drop your album. Okay, all right. Old Dirty, now it's your turn. Okay, Raekwon's your turn. Now Ghostface, your turn.
I'm just saying, bro. I've seen it. We've seen it in our lifetimes. That's why I'm like, why is this a foreign concept? Right? And it's not, because we literally just highlighted for the past 3 hours somebody who literally kind of laid sort of like the foundational work on how we can do this. Now, it was me and my homies who sort of organically did this in the 90s and going into the 2000s, right? That's why, for me, it's like, why are we arguing about this? Why is this a foreign concept? Like, me and the homies even did this shit. And we didn't even have to have a dialogue about Booker T. Washington in order to do it. But it's refreshing to kind of go back in the crates 100 years to see that there's cats who reflect us, our reflections.
Right.
Literally spelling out what it was that me and the homies did organically. I'm like, whoa, dude, that's a mind fuck.
And to have black men who are the main ones pushing back against it. That's, to me, that is the most problematic aspect to me. Is because for this space to talk about how much they respect the blue collar black men. I mean, you saw this space. I mean, they got all up in arms about this woman talking about the bus driver and all that. To see males who, and I'm starting to realize, what it is. Like, you're using the hard work. Like, for example, like my great grandfather, blue collar. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to use the sacrifices that he made, the work that he had to put in dealing, coming through Mobile, Alabama, racist times. I'm not going to use the strength that he represented to hide behind him and not do anything. I'm going to use that as an inspiration to say, well, damn, if he had a 6th grade education and was able to teach himself carpentry and do what he did. I lived in 3 of the houses my great grandfather did. Like, I lived, like, listening, doing the research for Booker T and seeing what these black men were able to do. Like, I was able to live some of that experience through what my great grandfather represented. So I'm going to be inspired by that. So no matter how much I can get to a point where I think, like, man, this is tough. All I got to do is look back at my grandfather and be like, nah, what he had was tough. What I got is pretty easy. And so, you know, to see cats push back on, like, when you look at things, not because it was anything major, just some minor thing, like you're talking about strategy. And that's what this fight has been about between the boy and the team. The boy didn't like his strategy. He didn't like the strategy. It don't matter if you don't like the strategy.
It don't matter.
Is the strategy working?
Does it work? Does the shit work? I don't give a shit if you don't like it. Does it work?
You know what I'm saying?
Like if you know, that's immaterial. If you like it or not, I mean, that's your own little situation. There, does it work though? You see, you can tell me I don't like it, but then at the same time tell me it works, and I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that. You know what I'm saying?
It's just the most amazing thing, like, because when we say things like that, man, we sound like the very females we're constantly critiquing. Well, I don't like why you said that, and I tell females all the time, I wasn't put on this earth to tell you things you like to hear. That's not perfect.
I don't ever recall signing a contract. That was my job.
So when it comes from males saying that, I'm like, that's why you have to do this research, because you have to understand the environment. It's easy for somebody to say, man, they wouldn't have did that to me, man. Man, if I would have been back on the planet, man, I would have did something. Like, dude, like, stop. It sounds good because you're not faced with that reality.
Right.
You're not faced with that reality, okay? It's a whole different ballgame. Especially when you got loved ones that you gotta contend with too. Like, man, if I do this, not only can something happen to me, but something can happen to them too. So he was doing the best that he could with what he had. And the fact that people were willing to choose him as a successor to Frederick Douglass says a lot.
It says an awful lot.
Says a lot.
I mean, you coming fresh out of that time, man, and you seeing what the mindset was of black men, man, and what they was really on, dude. And it's like, coming out of that shit, if that was their mindset, bro, like, in this modern era, in this modern time, dog, I refuse to be on some bitch nigga shit. I'm sorry, bro. And that's not to say that cats who disagree with us are on that. I'm just saying, me personally, I'm speaking for myself. This isn't a greater observation of people. I'm saying for myself. I cannot be on no bitch nigga shit, given what these dudes had to tackle coming out of that shit. And I'm gonna keep it a buck. The brother that we talking about today, he and I share the same last name. On the record, I'm gonna say it. See, so I would be doing him a disservice to be on some bitch nigga shit. I'm sorry. That's just how I think and how I feel. That's why I refer to him as an ancestor.
Right, me too.
Right? Same with you. Right? That's why I say we blood. Because I refuse. I refuse, bro. I refuse.
Yeah. I think it's just very interesting, just, doing some of this research, finding out that, because we just accept this as a norm, that we have black people who go before us constantly complaining for us as if they're speaking on our behalf. And to find out that there were black people back then, like, they were actually having conventions about this. Like, so for anybody that's familiar with the State of the Black Union that Tyler Smiley used to have, that's
Tyler Smiley used to do.
Yeah, that's nothing new. That goes back to even Booker T. Washington's time. Now, I didn't know that. So when I saw that it was black people who were telling black people who were out there agitating to stop, it makes a lot of sense, because in that time, they knew what they were facing. They were like, look, it is what it is. We got out of slavery. We need to be like, All right, so Mr. Charlie, we ain't got no problem with you. We gonna stay over here. We gonna do our thing. But you're in a very tenuous position. Like you're in a position where, it happened where they came in and raised the town. So you're dealing in that kind of environment. So you gotta have some people that's talking on your behalf that really understands the long-term strategy that you need to employ. Trying to agitate, that's short term. That's short term. And we've seen with all this agitation that a lot of black people do, especially from a political standpoint, what you got? I mean, like, at the end of the day, like, what do you really have? You know what I'm saying? You got your integration. Well, if you got your integration, you should be good. What's the problem? You know what I'm saying? The problem is you don't have institutions that best represent you. And when you have a man that has built those types of institutions that are still relevant to this very day, to the point that in Liberia, there is a school in Liberia named after Booker T. Washington.
Yep.
To show you the international impact that this man
Reflect
has.
his works and his objectives to do what he was trying to do in Africa, man.
They utilize his blueprint. When we cover this some more, we're gonna see how there were black people who were saying, we so busy trying to get acknowledgement from Wall Street, man, we need to do like we used to do. Take that cart, get that fruit, and go sell it on the side of the road. That's how a lot of grocery stores came into existence. Selling from on the side.
Farm stands, as they call them.
You know what I'm saying? And they built up their money over time. A lot of the Asians understand this. Why y'all think so many Asians set up farmers markets? They got that from us. They got the idea from us.
We said that earlier in this live stream.
They not setting up farmers. Man, inside of a farmer's market, depending on where you go, they'll be in there. They got the cell phone that they said. They got a cell phone distribution up in there. They might have them money where you can send money overseas.
Money wiring service.
They got all type of stuff.
You know what I'm saying?
What? Stuff that we look down upon because we want to go to white people grocery store and stuff like that because we don't want to. We have merchants associations where we have grocery stores. You know what I'm saying? That's to me that's the most frustrating thing about it. More so than anything was like if we would have just kept doing what we were doing from that particular time, we would be a whole lot further economically than we are now. We wouldn't feel the need to have to go to the government all the time asking for shit because we would be producing most of what we needed for ourselves.
Well, you go, like I said, man, it's one of these things, and this is kind of like the crux of these conversations, right? It's like, if you're from a business, if you're coming from a business angle, you're telling the government what it is that you need them to do for you, right? And then if it's on the other side, then you're voting and you're demanding that your politician do something for you, right? And it's two different mindsets. And I'm not trying to like extol the virtues of one over the other. I mean, we're just speaking on the position of one that says, hey, listen, we engage directly with our government officials. We engage directly with it. We're not in a position of begging. We're in a position of telling them what it is that our institution needs, right? Because this is supposed to be a reciprocal.
You literally showed this on your channel last year. Like literally. You literally show, even though there are so-called men in these spaces that says, hey, we're not about business. We're not about tech. You literally showed it on your channel, engaging with a politician from a business point, and you ultimately did what? You succeeded in what you were trying to.
Yeah, that's why I don't want people to think that this is just a bunch of bullshitting and grandstanding. It's like, no, man. What we are really trying to do is be examples of this, and we're using this example, right, who was inspiration for us to do what we do, so that we can then be the example to then pass that on and pay it forward.
Right.
That's it. And I'm just saying, like, this is 100+ years in the making, you guys. Right? We had a little bit of an interruption here with regards to, you know, civic mechanisms, civil rights movement, things of that sort, right? But see, there was a different mindset, and that this is what we were trying to try to illustrate here. It was like the mindset was different at that time coming out of slavery, right? We're not trying to overlay modern day issues or trying to contextualize what happened then based on our modern day positioning. It's just like, look, I'm looking at literally what had to be dealt with at that time and what was done given what was going on at the time. And I'm like, that to me is motivation enough. I don't really need to get off into the weeds.
And one of the things that this research, this full range of the research is going to show is he never was against political power.
That's the other part.
That has been the biggest lie concerning him. That has never been his mindset. His mindset was the strategy and the tactics on how to get to that power. That's different. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So there was never a separation between the business, philosophy, and civil rights. He was trying to show black people, hey, this is a better strategy long term to get to there. Because he knew what they was facing. He knew what they was up against. He was in the South. But see, when you have intellectuals like Du Bois who were living in the North, you don't have to contend with the Klan in the South, bro. And one of the things that we're going to show as well is the fact that when Du Bois was teaching at Atlanta University, and he was agitating like he was, what's the president? I referenced him earlier. I forget his name. The president of Atlanta University at that time was offered $2 million to get rid of Du Bois. Okay? Now he didn't do it, and if you look at Booker T. Washington at Tuskegee, he used a lot of the social science research, man, that Du Bois had done in teaching the black students. So he was not against, intellectual discourse, but he wanted things practical. He was not into all the theory. He wanted practical things. Black people needed practical things. They didn't need theory. They needed practical things.
He was a farmer. He was an agriculturalist and industrialist. Okay, like just you like your John Deere, these types of guys, right? Where they just all things industrial and agricultural and all that. Even so much as went to bring in George Washington Carver, your preeminent black scientist of the day. Okay, so I'm just saying that let's just really kind of think about what they were trying to cultivate at that time, man. There's a lot to take away from that. Hey, listen, bro. My daughters are literally just like, okay, Dad, you really 3 hours? Like, so we're gonna have to cut it short here, man. I gotta go and start getting some things together. You wanna? How do you want to kind of sort of end this off, and then we'll so that we can set a preface for the next one.
Okay. It's like I said before. And I saw this quote from another brother in this space. Black men are the only people out here who are defined by what we don't do, more than by what we do. And it's already bad enough when racists do it, when females that have all types of psychological issues going on with them do it. It's another thing when black men do it, especially when they're putting forth this idea that we're supporting blue collar, we're supporting, brothers who really put in that work and stuff like that. when we don't really have a full understanding of the full range of contribution and what they had to offer. As far as I'm concerned, there's no way in hell you can consider a man like this an accommodationist, a sellout, weak. Because make no mistake about it, when you do those things to a white man, you're basically challenging not just his blackness but his masculinity. And um, if you don't have any evidence, because I haven't seen any evidence whatsoever that Booker T has ever sold black people out. I've never seen it. And so,
No.
and if you don't have that kind of evidence, because institutions that you can be a part of that represent you. I was on an Instagram page for Tuskegee a couple of weeks ago, and they had some initiatives going on with them and government with space and getting some of the students in some certain fields I can't remember into NASA and stuff like that. This is his blueprint, man. That's still resonating to this day. You know what I'm saying? So to single him out like that, it would be surprising if I wasn't already privy to and have experienced the same responses from black people when you take on a certain nuanced approach in handling affairs of black people. You cannot approach our collective issues from an emotional standpoint. It's not going to get it done. Because if it was going to get it done, all the emotionalism, all the picketing, all that stuff, it would have got things done. Obviously, it takes more than that. And that's one of the things I want to do.
Well, I'll say this, man. Just as a dude who's of the time that I'm existing in, man. I tend to just kind of observe and look at what are mechanisms and modes that would work best, right? I take away from what's happened in the past, dude. I learn from it, but I don't relish in it. I try to push forward, and I think that he definitely, even what it is that I do today, with my partner Anti-Graph. Shout out to my homie, man, my little bro. We're in line with what it was that he was doing over 100 years ago. So there's just something to that, man, where it's kind of, I have an unwavering position on it. Not even because we share the same last name and ancestry, but it's more so it's what makes sense, right? As a man, what he set forth, I understand it. You know what I'm saying? I get it. I understand it. And I think that's the most important thing above all else. But let's do this, man.
And before you
go ahead. Yeah, go and get that point in.
The scary thing about this and the response to him is, if he was living during our time with that wisdom and trying to push this to black people, he wouldn't even be well received. It wouldn't get done.
He was more well received back then than he would be today.
Right. If Tuskegee and the National Negro Business League and the Negro Farmers Conference never existed, and he came to black people pushing this strategy, black people wouldn't even take it. That's the scary part.
Yeah. Well, let's do this, man. Well, we don't have any closing thoughts because we actually have to continue this, right? So we're gonna pick up where we left off on the next one. Ali Cologne says this stream was great. I'll definitely be tuning in from now on. I appreciate all the info shared and the music. Yeah. See, we wanted to make sure you caught that part too, right? That was an important piece. Carrier signals are very important. I'm a DJ. Raul's an MC, right? I produce. We do that type shit. So there is something to be said about sonics, right? Carrier frequencies, sound waves, and stuff like that in accordance to what's being spoken, right? No different than if Raul was spitting on a beat that I produce, right? Like, I'm gonna give him a beat, he's gonna write rhymes based on how that beat sounds, right? You see, so yeah, we have to kind of work in conjunction. So I appreciate that you caught that. But no, this is an important topic. Like I said, he and I, this has been a long time coming to do this one. It's been a minute since he started putting it together, and then to the time to today when we actually did it, and we're gonna have to continue it. That lets you know how long we've been kind of really sort of brainstorming on this shit.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? But
And I think it's good. I think it's good
his
to break.
legacy has
I
to
think
be
it's good to
lit.
break this one down in segments too, because it is long. So it gives people to kind of soak it in a little bit, soak it in, listen to it maybe a couple times, and then when we're ready to do the next one, we'll do that. So people can
Okay.
go to each one and try to make sure I highlight the next one, so people can kind of understand, what's going to be, kind of talk on it. But
Okay.
yeah, I mean, great topic. Um, if you're not willing to pay homage to the ancestors, man, who sacrificed for you, man, how can you expect, man, to be received well in this world, in this living world now? That's
Right.
an ancestor, man. And you know, I know looking at the past can be very painful for us, because a lot of the past that we've been fed down our throats is always negative and violent. But this right here, this is some awe-inspiring work that has been done for us collectively, men
Right.
and women. There is no reason people should be naming their children after Booker T. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
All right. This is how far this man went in terms of whether we realize it or not. His presence looms over Black America, because his impact was in a lot of the institutions and the people that y'all like. If you like Malcolm, well, a lot of the stuff that Malcolm was on, Elijah Muhammad got it from Booker T. Washington, because he was a Garvey guy. Okay, Garvey, if you Pan African and you want to pull right back to Africa type stuff, then guess what? You're gonna have to give Booker T. Washington.
Garvey was looking at Booker T as his inspiration.
Sure was. Sure was. So there's no way you can avoid giving him his flowers, and you should want to, because you can tell this story to your children about what we did as a collective, because this is not just about what he was able to do for men and what men did, but we're gonna also see that there were Black women who was a part of this too, and he wanted them to be a part of it as well.
Like I said, man, this is shit that predates this whole what we understand as the modern era, right? What's utilized in commerce today came from him, but in a time that's not modern. So that's just something just to kind of let that marinate, man. Let that marinate. But let's go ahead and cut it short, man. I gotta go run to the store and go grab some shit. I gotta grab a few other things for dinner. Okay, so please like, share. With cats that would appreciate this type of live stream. Where we were chopping it up today. There's gonna be, I think, a part 2 and a 3. This is a like I said, man. He and I we've been building on this one for probably like 2 or 3 months. There's a lot to unpack, right? So we didn't unpack it all. Probably maybe 33% of it, right? So there might be 2 other live streams that kind of follow up after this one, but this is the first. But yeah, this one's been a long time coming, so I'm glad y'all could roll through. Once again, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't, and we'll circle back and catch up with y'all on the next one. Peace out.